What's happening, everybody? Hi. I had to assume the podcasting position here for the program. It's the Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's 3:11. So, I don't know. Act accordingly. What amber is the color? Are you down with this podcast? Disgusting. Disgusting. I'm not gonna play into it any further because thinking about 311 just makes me feel sick inside after a time, and that time is usually like 5 or 6 seconds of just like, you know, the concept of 311 before I just go like, ugh, God, you know?
Chill.
No, stop, man. No one needs this. Hi. What's going on? We're here. It's March. GDC is right around the corner. So my annual cavalcade of emails where I reply to people and just be like, nope, not going. No, not going to be there. Nah, not making it out. Not making it out for that. Has been in full swing, and that's been nice. I don't know. Like it's not a. GDC is not necessarily a big show for game coverage, and they try to every year some number of game makers try to have meetings where they show games to the press, and rarely feels like that's worth it. I don't know. I guess they figure, well, everyone's going to be in town, so we should try to show our game. And then, you know, it's like, we're going to have you come through and see it's the same gameplay. Like one thing I got was someone showing a game, and they were like, this is the same content that we showed off back at summer, or not a Summer Game Fest, at the Game Awards, because they rented a hotel room near the Game Awards and were showing it to people there. Which I remember getting an email from them back then, where they said, this is the same gameplay we showed at Gamescom. And so, like, it's like, okay, yeah, I don't know. You could bring a new demo. I mean, not that would, you know, whatever. I'm not in town, so I don't really care either way. But it was just like kind of a weird string along of just like, we're just bringing this same demo. We gotta get as many people to see it as possible, which is smart. I mean, you know, hey, what are you going to have a team spend a bunch of time making a new demo when you still got people who haven't seen it? Like, that's probably like a smarter way to go. At this point, I would just say, just send out builds of the game. I don't know. I think as everything kind of spread out, you know, San Francisco was such a hub for the games media in terms of, you know, IGN and GameSpot were there. And, you know, the future publications were, you know, like not too far out of town, and you know, like there was a lot of, and there were a lot of people then too. There are way fewer people and way fewer publications and all of that these days. So it's just like, I don't know, San Francisco is just not that hub anymore. Or I mean, you know, it is insofar as there is no hub for it anymore, but there are probably still more games journalists per capita in San Francisco than most other cities that I can think of. Maybe London. I don't know. Maybe the United Kingdom has us beat now on number of people actually writing about games. It feels I don't know, sad in a way, but whatever. Things change. That was always how this went. Is that things change, and after, you know, this last like 5 years of pandemic, work from home, blah, 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 all this sort of stuff, of course, everyone's spread out even further at that point. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think the overall value of shows like GDC and like I'm getting some information of things that are like happening, like it's things that are happening around GDC. The only nice thing that would be cool about going to GDC in person would be seeing some people. And catching up in person with people. That's the nice thing about it, is the on the ground intelligence or whatever of just catching up with folks and just kind of taking a lay of the land. Though the lay of the land these days, everyone pretty well knows, like, it's fucked up out here. It's fucked up out here. Everyone's getting laid off all the time. Who has money to pay for a GDC pass these days anyway? You know, if you're a game developer not working for a major company that just like gets a bunch of lanyards. But I think even then, like, are they? Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird show, and it was always kind of on the, you know, PAX East would happen on the heels of GDC. Sometimes it would overlap directly in a way that was just like, geez, what is going on? And some people would leave GDC and go directly to PAX, and that always seemed ridiculous on top of ridiculous. But such is life. I don't know. The whole atmosphere for these types of shows seems really really scattered, I guess I would say. I don't know. It's just a really weird environment for that stuff. Of course, the Summer Games Fest is happening with all of its play days and all of that stuff. I actually did just register for that. And so, you know, that's going down, and I think that'll continue to be a good summer piece of info. But like there is like people trying to do some showcase type work here in March, not necessarily piggybacking off of GDC directly, but just like, hey, if you've got stuff to show in March, we've got a show you can show it on, like that type of thing, which is probably pretty smart. But you know, we'll kind of see the quality of what is shown. It's hard. I think a lot about how I spend my time, because that's, you know, one of the main things that I have control over, right? Is like, what am I spending my time? You know, which games am I choosing to look at, and which games am I passing over, and all of that. And you know, it's been freeing in a way, because there's always a certain element of like, well, this game's really big, so I should really make sure that I cover it, you know, because people will want to know. And, you know, there is still that draw, but also at the same time, I'm just one guy, and, you know, there's going to be some stuff that I'm just not going to touch, and things that I'm just not going to, or if I do touch it, it's stuff that I'm not going to really play enough to do anything with. And like the last few Like a Dragon games, I haven't really done much with those. And, you know, I respect that series from a distance, but just like, they always come out at a really weird time where there's always like something else I'm doing that I'm just like, oh, I should really play that. And then by the time I actually have cleared enough space to look at it, you know, 2 months have gone by, and I'm like, well, whatever, I'll still check it out or something. But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird. So like, I guess that's my way of saying, like, you know, these shows come along and you start getting a lot of invites or like, hey, would you like to see the trailer early for this thing? And I'm finding increasingly the answer is like, nah, I'm not really. And it feels bad, because, you know, it's I feel for the people that are out there trying to promote games in this environment, because I think it's never been harder to break through with a video game, big or small. You know, big games run into interesting problems with, you know, getting out there. They just have bigger marketing budgets, so they just can kind of do it with advertising, whereas, you know, most indie games don't have that kind of a budget. And so, you know, I think that the environment for covering games has never been worse. And the number and the environment for just like number of games shipping on a daily basis has also, I think, probably never been worse. And so I think, you know, as those independent developers and smaller developers are trying to like poke through with their stuff, it ends up being really challenging to just kind of get through the noise. Especially, you know, like GDC will happen and there will be like headlines about, I don't know, some more dumb AI shit probably. And maybe there'll be like a point update for the Unreal Engine, or like we've got Nanite 2, or like something, right? There'll be some middleware updates that will get people talking. There was a we'll get into it in the news, but Mark Cerny was just out there talking about some new upscaling technology that they want to bring into the PS5 Pro dev environment to allow people to use that. And so we'll see tech updates like that, right? And those will grab some headlines. There will be a handful of games and trailers that will probably grab some headlines. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it'll be like one or two bigger games at GDC, that are shown adjacent, or they'll put out a trailer or whatever. Sort of like how like we'll talk about Death Stranding 2. That was Kojima at South by Southwest, which is not a game show, despite them trying to make it more of a game show off and on over the years. There was a time when they were very much like, we would love for you to come and cover South by Southwest. We would love for you to come and make sure that you're covering the show. And the answer was always, why? What do you have? Like, are there games there? And they were like, well, yeah, well, we're there's one panel that's going to have a game at it. And you're like, dude, the fuck? Like, no, I'm not going to go out to Texas to cover one fucking game. It's just like, it's not a fucking thing, and you see why they would try to do it, right? Because they need to grow their potential base of people that would actually go to South by Southwest or whatever. And I've heard South by Southwest sounds like it was really fun for a long time, and then at some point very much not. I don't know. Like it crossed some Rubicon into just like what the fuck is happening here? Oh my God. But yeah, they would have their years where they were trying to get video games at South by Southwest, and that would take the form of like a single panel or whatever. But just like when they paid us to go to CES one year, they were it was like this weird cart before the horse situation of like, okay, they're having trouble getting exhibitors on board who want to show up and show games, because the exhibitors are probably saying things like, who will come to our booth? Who will see our stuff? Like, why would we pay for why would we pay for space at your show at CES or for a panel at South by Southwest or whatever? Why would we do this if there's no one here to cover it? No one's going to care about it. And so then they have to go, oh shit. Yeah. They're not wrong. And so then they come to, the press and go like, hey, you should come. But they haven't done enough work in either. Like, there's no critical mass on either end of it. And so it just ends up being this like, I don't know how you get that going. Honestly, I don't know how you solve that problem. If you're like a convention planner and you're like, we want to have video games at our thing. I don't even know how you would get started on that in a way that would lead to anything good. In terms of like, good outcomes for like, hey, your booth got a lot of coverage. Like a lot of people covered your video game or whatever. But, it's I don't know. I guess my point is like, it's been a really difficult thing for, I think, a lot of promoters as well as people making games and what have you, to try to find ways to get in front of people. And over the last 5 years, that's only gotten more difficult, especially I think as the people who cover games have spread out more and more as we went through the work from home phase. I started having this. There's a story I'll tell next week about a build of a game that was offered to me through a cloud streaming service in a way that I did not agree to the terms, but it was a very strange thing. But we see more and more. There are more opportunities that come through like that are like someone was like, hey, do you want to join a Discord server to listen to a call where the developers, or rather, it was just this game, the game from the not Disco Elysium people. They were like, do you want to join a Discord? There will be no Q&A. And you're like, no, what? Just put out a video and I won't watch that either. But like, at least you're not saying, come join a Discord server at a set specific time to hear this. It's just like, no, why? So like, there's just like a lot of weird different ways that people are trying to like, it was like, hey, do you want to do hands-on with this game, but we're only doing it, on this day between this time and this time. and you can play it during that thing through a video stream, and we'll let you have access to that build for 3 hours. And you're like, that's cool. I'm gonna, like, no. I mean, if I had the time and was really, really excited about the thing, then I think that would make a ton of sense. But it's just like, I've got 8-bit Nintendo games to rank in that time period, so I'm gonna stick with that. And yeah, it's just, I don't know. I don't really have a solution to this, because I think it's just a really tough environment across the board for everyone involved. When it comes to covering games, getting your games covered, everything. Ultimately, I think this is, and maybe we'll try to get him on here at some point and talk about it. But I've been thinking more and more about this announcement of the reborn Acclaim, and like the specifics of like, what do you actually get out of it? What do you actually get out of being Acclaim as opposed to any other name? Because it's not like they're getting IP. It's not like they're getting an abundance of IP anyway. And I think the answer is you get people who go like, Acclaim, I know what that is. I'll return that email. I'll return that call. Acclaim, weird. What's that about? You'll get like that type of like curiosity that if you just launched a new indie publisher and said, here's our thing, like you're in the sea of noise with nothing standing out about you other than the game itself. And then you need to try to get the game into a place where it's playable and great so that you can show it to people and go, no, look at this fucking thing, God damn it. And I think that's just hard. That's just hard. And I think, the big outlets are under a different type of pressure these days, and that pressure is only intensified. But I think you have the big outlets like an IGN or a GameSpot, I guess, and they're in this position of like, well, we need traffic and SEO and this and that, and so it behooves us to cover games in this specific way. And by this specific way, I mean, here's a list of all the WWE 2K5 locker codes. And that's run as a news story for whatever reason, because that's the way Google likes to see it. And that's more important than, hey, this indie publisher no one's heard of is publishing a game from a dev team that no one's ever heard of. And look at it, it's a cool trailer. Look at this cozy, this and that. And, and it just falls through the cracks. It's very easy to see why it falls through the cracks, because there are no systems in place to ensure that it doesn't. And I imagine if you were a publisher and if you're working in PR, I imagine it must be an increasingly frustrating time of like trying to get the word out about the thing you're making, because you probably really believe in it, and whatever. That's something I can easily relate to. Getting the word out about the thing you're doing because you really like it is a thing that I'm in that position. Like how do I tell more people about this thing I'm doing? And it's all bad. I don't know. Like it's like none of it is awesome. Like none of it is in an awesome place. And I think it has this kind of compound effect on a lot of different things that, like it's just no one is set up to, like the incentives for everyone are all different now. Incentives used to be aligned in a weird way, and that I don't mean that in an untoward kind of unethical way. What I mean to say is game publications want to get exclusive information about big games and have no one else have it, because that means you have to go to them for the information. And that was the way it worked for a long time. And GameSpot and IGN, the print magazines would fight over it for years and years. And then when the print magazines imploded, GameSpot and IGN would fight over who got the exclusives on different topics, or, there were like One-Up was in the mix for a few months there or whatever, I guess. But they were able to leverage what was left of the magazine to kind of get that. So it wasn't necessarily quite the same. And so you would have companies that would be like, oh, I've got this big thing and who's going to give me the best offer for it? And, on the other end, be like, well, we'll give you the top slot on the day of this, and then we'll do this and we'll put this, and these are the numbers. And we think basically this many people will see your fucking thing if you give it to us exclusively. We think this many millions of people will see it. And And that was like fine. You know, it was like, okay, we want this story, and here's you know, like we think that if you give it to us, then this will happen. And we never competed on the GameSpot side. We never competed for exclusive reviews, and so it was always funny when IGN would like brag about having an exclusive review, because we were never on the other side going like, oh darn it, because I think exclusive reviews are fucking filthy. I think it's an ugly. The idea of it creates too much of an environment for someone to ask like, well, if we give you this exclusive review, I mean, do you like the game? Are you going to give it a good score? Are you going to do this? What's going to happen? You know, because if you give someone an exclusive review and the very first review of your game hits and it's like a fucking 5.5 out of 10, you're like, oh, what the fuck did I do? I gave the exclusive to someone who hates our fucking game. Jesus Christ. So you would endeavor to prevent that from happening, I would assume. And so that whole concept has just always felt completely fucking broken to me. Like, no thanks. But whatever, man. On the preview side, that's just always kind of like, that's just how that stuff always operated. The same way that people would want to be on the cover of a magazine, and they would be like, we would love for you to consider our game for the cover of your magazine, or vice versa. You could pitch the cover to publishers and say like, hey, give us the exclusive on the reveal for Mortal Kombat whatever, and we will put it on the cover, and and that's how a lot of that stuff used to work. But everything was much bigger then. You know, it was very easy to do all of that because you're like, well, this is another big franchise, or there's a kind of built-in hook because it's a big game and there aren't as many games, and so people play kind of whatever, and so, you know, a large mainstream audience knows what the fuck this is. And now there are just so few of those franchises and experiences that happen on an annual basis that, you know, it just doesn't work the same way. Also, of course, all the publishers decided at some point to just start YouTube channels and hire people and do their own promotion and stuff, and cut those publications out of the loop completely. Because why wouldn't you just directly, why would you go and they realize like, okay, they're going to eat shit on it for a little while, but at some point someone woke up one morning and said, why would I give this trailer to GameSpot or IGN and let them get millions of views on it when I could just publish it to YouTube and get millions of views on it, and then they will subscribe to our official channel and we can talk to them directly instead of having to filter our message through a bunch of hungover 25-year-olds who are writing about our games. and they just woke up one day and said like, oh, well, fuck this. Like, YouTube is a big enough deal that we'll build our own thing. And so they did. And so the previews game on those types of publications just kind of dried up overnight. And you would still see some bigger pieces because, you know, it's like you still want those interviews. You still want like the independent stamp of approval of like, hey, this publication said that they think our thing is cool, because that goes a little bit further than you saying you think your thing is cool. But at the end of the day, you know, people are going to see the thing on YouTube no matter what. And as social media and YouTube and all these other kind of off-site platforms gained prominence, you know, there's no need for that middleman anymore. And so that whole thing went away. And yeah, I don't know. It didn't get replaced by much of anything. I mean, you know, obviously there's still plenty of opportunities for writing. I think that's, you know, that's what we're seeing with, you know, kind of the cooler stuff out there. Like Aftermath is, you know, like they're out there writing about games, you know, and they're out there kind of performing the task of that type of journalism, and I think doing it really well. And, you know, you have other sites like Video Games Chronicle who are covering things in more of the kind of direct kind of game focused way a lot of the time, which I really appreciate as well. And you know, I think you do have these outlets out there that are kind of making that happen in a variety of different ways. But, you know, like I said, I think the incentives are all really weird right now, and it has been for a long time, and I don't think there's any end to that in sight necessarily. It's just kind of how it is. So I don't know. GDC. In conclusion, in conclusion, GDC is next week. And GDC has always been kind of a weird show. It was, working in San Francisco, it was like GDC was literally right around the corner. And some years I would not go to a single thing over there. There just wouldn't be things that would, that for coverage purposes, or, I'd go meet somebody for lunch, or I'd go, I'd get a badge and go watch a talk just out of like personal interest or something, but it wasn't necessarily something that was just like, oh, this is going to be a big story. Like the biggest story to come out of GDC in the last 10 years is like, someone overheard a developer talking about the PS4 Pro in line at GDC, at Moscone Center, Like that was the biggest story. It was like, we heard him talking about the PS4 Pro. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, so yeah, I don't know. I guess I did not mean to spend a chunk of time at the top of the show talking about the coverage environment, but GDC has always reminded me of that. GDC as a show has always been like this kind of weird thing that, there's always something of value there. Like I always would come away from GDC feeling like I knew more about the way games were made in a way that might help me do my job in a kind of larger scale sense. But it was not a big show for this game got announced and this happened. You'd be like, oh, Nintendo's doing the GDC keynote, and you'd go sit and watch it and be like, there's nothing like consumer focused about this. There's nothing of value as a consumer focused publication to this. And that's kind of always been the thing. And that's fine. I think it should be that way. The Game Developers Conference should be for game developers, in my opinion. That said, I really like going. So I would like to get back to that show one of these days, but not this year. Meanwhile, around here, man, we're on the 6th or 7th world of Sonic Superstars. My daughter is I have to play. She has beaten a handful of the bosses herself, but I have to do the Chaos Emerald mini games, and I have to do some of the bosses. And then sometimes if she is holding to the right and there's a wall in her way and she doesn't know what to do, sometimes I'm handed the controller for that. So I've been playing, well, let's just say more Sonic Superstars than I would ever want to play. As a controller is being forced into my hands, going, "Hey, Daddy, I need to help. You need to help doing this." And like, begrudgingly, like, ugh, fine. I think that game is really bad. I mean, I know, like it's a Sonic game, so like whatever, like there's, of course I would say that, but also I like separately from that and like on its own merits and like, is this like a good game? Is this a good game by like Sonic 2D Sonic standards? It seems shitty. Like the movement feels bad. There's level design stuff in there that like just doesn't feel good. Like, there's a level, there's a desert level with a big snake kind of going through, so you're like running on a snake and it's waving up and down, and the like jumping off of the snake while the snake is moving feels completely broken in a way that you're just like, the physics on this are so terrible. Like even for a Sonic game, this is like a next level fucked up thing happening here. And the solutions to some of the issues, like the boss fights are just everything across the board, I'm finding to just be really, really fucking low rent. And I know that like when Sonic Superstars came out, I think it people were not into it. It was like hey, what if we made a new Super Mario Brothers but for Sonic? Like that was kind of, it seemed like it was sort of the attitude there. It's a bad game. It does not feel good. It's ugly. I think a lot of the, like, I don't think the music is especially good. Like there's just the stuff you would expect a Sonic game to nail in terms of just like sense of speed and just the kind of colorful visual quality and, a kind of like at least kind of a good soundtrack or, some great soundtracks over the course of the years. But it's it just feels fucking miserable, dude. Like, it just feels like trash. And has like a not insignificant amount of slowdown. I mean, I'm playing on a PS5 Pro. I don't know if the game specifically has Pro support, but either way, it'll get choppy in some spots in a way that you're like, oh no, what happened here? It's a very confusing. It's a very confusing Sonic game, even as someone who has been shitting on Sonic games for a good long time. This one seems real bad, but at the same time, like, she is able to play most of it on her own, and she's enjoying herself and whatever. So like that's kind of where I'm at with it, is just like, all right, yeah, if you like this, and it's my fault for telling you that it existed, and hey, but at least she's having a good time with it. And I look at that as like, well, look, if you're having a good time with these dog shit ass video games, then wait until you get like just a little bit more dexterity and you can get into the good shit, because I think that'll be that'll be cool. But it's, you also, it's great for kids because half of it plays itself. You run to the right, she goes zzz, 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 and like runs through the thing, and like, okay. And everyone has an okay time. Meanwhile, my son wants to play more Pac-Man World, so I uninstalled it. I uninstalled Pac-Man World from the PS5 because I can't. I simply can't. I have to draw a line somewhere. This very morning, he said, I want to play some Pac-Man World. And I was like, oh, we don't have it anymore. And literally I said, you want to play some Sonic instead? He said, yeah. And he played some of that, and he's 3, so he was not having a great time with it. And then I was like, well, I bet there's some crappy kids games on the PlayStation streaming service or whatever. And sure enough, there's a PJ Masks game made by the same developer that did all the shitty Paw Patrol games. And I think they maybe did the Peppa Pig game, which is not terrible compared to that other shit. But yes, Outright Games it is outright bad, and that PJ Masks game was on the streaming service, so I didn't have to wait for it to download, and so we streamed some PJ Masks PS5 here this morning, and I don't know, man. It sucks the same way that all the other games by almost all the other games by that developer seem to suck. But he was stoked. He was stoked because he's a PJ Masks fan. So he was excited by the very concept of that game existing. And then my wife saved him from that fate and took him out somewhere to do actual physical activity. So that happened at least. Let's take a break. We'll come back. Maybe we'll talk about some professional wrestling video games and, the news and all of that stuff. Be right back. Hey, you feeling a little discouraged when you look in the mirror? Do you value your hair and find that it's just slowly slipping away? Hey, you don't just have to sit there and take it, because this is where Hims comes in. You can check out their personalized hair loss solutions and start seeing your hair grow back in as little as 3 to 6 months. Hims provides you with convenient and quality access to a range of hair loss treatments that work all from the comfort of your couch. And Hims makes treating hair loss simple with these doctor-trusted options and clinically proven ingredients, like finasteride and minoxidil. They can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. You have a lot of options here, personalized chewable, oral, spray, and serum treatments, so you can figure out what works best for you. It's a very simple process. It's done 100% online. You have to go wait in a doctor's office, go talk to a doctor, nothing. No, answer a few questions, and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. If you're prescribed, your treatment will be sent directly to you for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, and they can help you get your confidence back too with visibly thicker and fuller hair. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/Jeff. That's HIMS.com/Jeff for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/Jeff. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. WWE 2K25 came out last week. I guess the release for people who don't want to pay too much money for it is still to come. They gave like a full week of like expensive access to the game. I'm just looking here. Yeah, the full version of the game is still 2 days away. But they did their like, buy the game now and play it now thing, but only if you give us $130, a minimum of $100 actually. If you got the Dead Man edition, that was $100, and the Bloodline edition is $130, at least on PC. I don't know if those prices are $10 higher on console or not, because the base model on PC is $60 instead of $70, so maybe it's even more there. This 2K seems to be really dedicated to showing you just how much they don't give a fuck about the PC. And this year's WWE game feels like even more so. Like it's for the longest time it was like, oh, well, this game's based on the last gen version or whatever, but this feels even like the big thing they're promoting this year is this thing called the Island, which I have not seen it, but as far as I can gather, it is sort of more of an open world walk around. Like I think you dress up an avatar in separate clothing, which you can of course buy with real money, some clothing for your island guy. They have decided not to put that new mode onto PC this year. And then they gave this kind of this really, I don't know. I development is hard, so I don't necessarily want to but the quote was like, there's so many different PC configurations out there, and we were basically saying like they weren't ready to tackle this new mode on such a wide variety of hardware, and yet like this thing is still like coming out across a good amount of platforms as well. I'm actually checking right now if this game is coming out on PlayStation 4 or not. Okay, it looks like it's just current generation devices. So there is no, it's PS4. Yeah, no, there is it is in fact there is a PS. So they did a PS4 version of the game, but don't want to do but I think the Island maybe is not on that version of the game either. I'm not sure. This has been a weird launch for this game. I don't think that they have necessarily done a great job of getting the word out about it. Like there were a handful of previews, like and maybe whatever. This game markets itself. The people who want an annual wrestling game, they're the people who keep track of this stuff anyway. So you probably don't need to do too much. But I don't know, man. It feels like that this game kind of just slipped out the door a little bit, and like, oh, it's out now. And I was watching WWE programming up until relatively recently and didn't feel like that they were really cramming the release date down the throat. They were talking about the game. They were showing the game there. And some previews would hit with, a few things about the different modes, but I guess I just wasn't really prepared for it to come out. But sure enough, it did. And this PC version is, like I said, there's a couple of things. First of all, they sell you 7 days of early access if you buy the expensive version of the game. But in my experience, their online servers have been more down than up during this week. So like, even if you wanted to do the like card, the My Rise faction, like the card based mode that they do, you can't do that without an online connection. and without their servers being up. And so it's just this weird, like, you can't play online, you can't connect to the custom character. Like, it's just been like, that stuff's been really dicey in a way that you're like, I don't know why this would be this way. You make this game every year, you know how to make these servers. Like, it just felt like they, you know, like, oh well, whatever, the game's not officially out for another week anyway, so fuck it. Like, it just feels a little careless. It doesn't have the island, which is this whole new mode, and yet they left in text. So if you buy these expensive versions of the game, it comes with a bunch of shit. In fact, I actually do have that in front of me now. If you buy the $130 Bloodline edition, you get a bunch of cards for you get a My Faction Persona card, Mattel Elite Series 114 Jey Uso. But you also get like Yeet sunglasses and an OTC shirt and a Family Above All hoodie for your island character. And those are cosmetics for your island character. And so the PC version of the game still showed, hey, you just unlocked this shirt for the island, even though the island is not available on that platform at all. It just like, there's just like careless stuff like that in there. When I launched it, it gave me this weird VSync message that was like, hey, your refresh rate is 119 hertz, which is not true. It's 360. God damn it. But they're like, it's okay. So we usually use VSync at 60 hertz because of this. It was like this really convoluted message. I ended up posting it to Blue Sky because I was just like, I read it. It was funny because I read it like 3 times. I was like, what the fuck are you saying? I thought what it was saying is that the game would run too fast if I had VSync turned off because they had tied game logic to frame rate or something like that. But I said no anyway. And then I went back and read it again after the fact. And I was like, oh, that's not what it's saying. It's just saying, hey, if there's tearing, you could turn. It's basically saying what VSync is, but in the most convoluted way possible, in a way that they probably didn't need to have in there. The game itself, I don't really have. I don't I don't know that I have much to say about the game itself, other than they continue to make this game year in, year out, and I don't know. Like, it's interesting to me to see people say like, "Oh, dude, they did this year," and I'm that way about some games. The games that I'm into, like, I definitely am like, "No, they made a lot of meaningful changes." You Philistines, you know, like whatever. But I don't know, man. Like I played a few matches and was just like, "Oh, right, yeah, I don't actually want to do this." But I don't know. I don't think it looks great. Maybe it's, you know, it's that's one of those things that always comes down to the characters you're picking, and if they got the opportunity to get new, fresh, high-res scans of those people, of those human beings, or not. But yeah, I don't know. CM Punk, someone who I'm sure that they were able to get fresh scans of, I thought just looked really rough. And then I was like, who should CM Punk fight? And I was like, Diesel. Yeah, okay. So I had CM Punk and Diesel fight, and then I was pretty much done. I don't know. I was like, all right, yeah, I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay for another year on this one, because the gameplay is roughly the same. They have in fact made some changes to it from reading some of the coverage of it, but yeah, a lot of that is just kind of lost on me at this point. I just philosophically can't really get into it. I would love to see a new, fresh take on a wrestling game. I think that's where I'm always at. Is, man, it'd be nice to see someone come in and really shake this up and do something exciting and new and playable and fun. That AEW game was not that. They're about due for something. They should probably make another AEW game. But it should definitely not be a sequel to that thing that they made. They should toss most of that work and go in a different direction. I don't know. This seems kind of pointless. Oh, Pat says, I want to see the Blood on Rules match. Other than that, all about the creator wrestlers. Also, intergender wrestling in a WWE game. I guess I didn't realize that was new, but there is an option in there. I guess there's no blood in intergender matches. I think that's a toggle when you toggle blood off and on, which it defaults to off. I turned it on, and it says in there like, oh, this won't affect this and energy this, and I was like, oh, well, weird, but also not weird in that very, very specific WWE kind of way. The other thing, you know, when we're not playing Sonic the Hedgehog, I'm trying to play other games, and it's sort of a weird thing I've run into is so I'm playing. I will talk in specifics next week, but I'm in the process of playing Assassin's Creed Shadows, and it's really hard to play an Assassin's Creed game when you've got a bunch of little kids running around. Especially one who wants to know the name of as many games as possible. So I had this weird parenting moment of like, do I want my daughter to know what an assassin is? Because she's like, what's the name of this game? I was like, oh, it's just this game I'm playing. She's like, what is it? No, but what is it? I'm like, it's Assassin's Creed Shadows. I'm kind of like mumble it out. And she's like, okay, what is it? And she asked me like 5 or 6 times. I'm like, I told you. And I had to think about it. I'm like, like whatever, like who cares? But also, wait a minute, do I want my daughter to know the word assassin? There's a lot of weird stuff like that. There's a lot of just like verbiage things with kids that I think sometimes it's just this knee-jerk reaction because you're like, well, when I was a kid, I couldn't say, like my grandmother hated that I said the word sucks. So I could not say the word sucks around her. She thought that was, I don't know. She thought it was gross. She thought it was vulgar, whatever it was. We didn't really get into it, but it was just like, I was like, man, sucks is the least of the, like, of the words I am saying on a regular basis, sucks is about as tame as it fucking gets. And so it was sort of a weird, it was a weird adaptation that I had to make around her. But obviously like some kids go through a lot of stuff about like, saying the word heck instead of hell or saying the word gosh instead of God. And so my daughter came home from school from, and someone that she is friends with says, oh my God, all the time. So she's just like, oh my God, like when things happen. And it just, I have this twinge. Like, I mean, I don't really care, but also as a person, I don't really care. But as a parent, I'm like, I don't know, man, that kind of sucks. Like, she should probably be saying, oh my God. At 5 years old, she should probably be saying, oh my gosh. And I was like, It's a weird quandary because, like, again, like, I don't, it's like, what, like, oh, must not take the, it's like, that's not what that phrase is about. And on top of that, also, but just the thinking that stuff through of like, what's okay for this kid to say, is a really, yeah, you get a lot of bullshit drilled into you, man. You get a lot of bullshit drilled into you. And having young children is this weird, you don't expect it, or at least I did not expect it. I've come to expect it more now because it's happened enough times, but the kind of cultural cross-examination of just like the things I've grown out of and been like, dude, fuck that. I don't like, well, don't say the word God, like all that. And now on the other end of it, just like, yeah, it's probably no good. It's probably not great. But yeah, I don't really know. So whatever, you just kind of play all that stuff by ear and kind of see how it goes. I'm pretty good about not cursing around the kids. But also sometimes I've got things playing on the computer or like it's not that they're not hearing curse words. So it's, I don't really know what the final, what the actual solution to this is. But yeah, my dad and I reached an agreement when I was a kid. He said, you can swear around me, just don't swear at me. And I was okay with that. And that worked out just fine, but you eventually get a little too casual with it, and you eventually, you are overheard at school saying the word motherfucker, and then, you know, they don't like it. They don't fucking like it, dude. Like when you are in elementary school, they tend to frown on that shit. And I get it, whatever. I get it. But whatever. Let's move on to the news. Well, I think about, but yes, the concept of an assassin who murders people. Because she already has said, oh, we're going to kill him. She already has talked about killing in the context of like playground games and video games. And, you know, I'm not letting her play mega violent stuff or anything like that, but the idea of killing, that's also a weird thing to hear coming out of her mouth. The word kill. I'm just like, geez. It's this feeling in the back of your mind of just like, I'm fucking up somewhere. I'm not exactly sure how I'm fucking up, but I'm definitely fucking up somewhere. And an assassin is another one of those that I'm just like, I don't know that I want her. I'm not sure that I'm quite ready for her to understand assassinating and kill other stuff, but yeah, I don't know where the line is on that. I think a big part of parenting is just kind of holding some of that stuff off as long as you can, and then like, hey, yeah, this happens, and this is, you know, you don't want. The last thing I want is for her to have nightmares about this idea of just like, there are some people out there that just kill other people, and for her to take that the wrong way. And then be like afraid that she's going to be assassinated, you know? And so figuring out the right way to, and with when she was watching me play Assassin's Creed, like at first I was like, well, it's this historical thing from a long time ago. And, you know, okay, well, let's talk about Lu Bu and the Yellow Turban Rebellion. Let's talk about Nobunaga. Let's really talk about the whole region of history and really go through all of the Chinese stuff and all the Japanese stuff, really catch up on really what's going on around this time. And I was like, that's not going to work. Anyway, we'll talk specifically about Assassin's Creed next week, but yeah. Yeah, that's having the kids run in here while I'm playing that game, I will leave it at that, has led to me leaving it paused for over an hour, and stuff, waiting for like, okay, I can't, all right, I can't do, all right, nope, can't do this right now. Let's get to the news. Windows Central has another Xbox focused chunk of info here that they are reporting. They're reporting it as an exclusive. They have sourced this to sources, which is to say that obviously, you know, none of this has been officially announced, but it is talking about handheld Xbox. And when we might see something like that, and what type of form that might take. We know that strategically that is something that they are very interested in doing, and they have said, hey, yes, we're working on, you know, an Xbox handheld device and whatever else. Windows Central is reporting that Microsoft is in cahoots with an OEM, a company that makes PC stuff. And their verbiage here is think Asus, Lenovo, MSI, Razer, etc. On an Xbox branded gaming handheld. And that if the plans go according to plan, that it will be released later this year. Currently codenamed Keenan, and they're saying, Windows Central is saying, this gaming handheld will look unmistakably Xbox, we're told, complete with an official Xbox guide button and Xbox design sensibilities. The column here does say, given that this is a partner device, I expect this handheld to be more PC oriented, Keenan is almost definitely running full Windows, putting the Microsoft Store and PC Game Pass front and center, along with the ability to install things like Steam. Which I think makes sense. I think making a closed ecosystem handheld that just plays Xbox stuff is kind of a non-starter. Because why wouldn't you just do a PC if all your modern games are coming to PC anyway? You lose some backwards compatibility there, obviously, in terms of like, currently, as of right now today, Windows devices cannot play Xbox One games officially. Unofficially, there's been some really interesting work on that front, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, there's currently no part of the Xbox ecosystem that involves you playing older Xbox games, 360, Xbox One, whatever, on modern Windows. I would be interested to see if they would do this. If you do remember, they did announce that they did announce, at least internally, that they had a game preservation team that is not a team that is just working on this like AI shit we were talking about a couple weeks ago. There is someone doing something out there. I would assume that one of the things they could be doing is finding ways to make these games run on Windows in addition to an Xbox. Which seems like it would be a very doable thing from a technology perspective, like getting Xbox 360 games to run on a modern Windows 11 machine. Extremely doable, just not in an official capacity. So, if they come up with a proper 360 emulator for a PC, just so they can continue to tell their backwards compatibility story, which I think would be really cool. Let's hope. I don't know. I guess like I would hope that they would do that. But that's whatever. That's kind of not really the chunk of news here. Windows Central is also reporting that this is kind of a research experience for them, and that this is kind of a place for them, one of the first places for them to test Windows 11 device aware capabilities, meaning like Windows 11 knows the type of device it is being run on and adjusts itself accordingly. This is we've talked about this. We know that they're working on different types of tools and different types of functionality for Windows to allow it to run better on handheld devices. And by better, I don't mean like with processors, whatever. I more mean like, hey, you need to be able to navigate this OS with a gamepad. You need to be able to navigate this OS with without a keyboard, without a mouse, like, you need to be able to do the things you need to do to get into games. We know that they're working on stuff along those lines. I would assume that this would be a place for that type of work to maybe debut. And yeah, this is something that Windows has already done to a certain extent. I would not say that they have done it especially well, but I have not used a wide range of Surface tablets. But this is something going all the way back to Windows 8 that they were like, oh, well, if it's running on a tablet, then we know to bring up the pen interface and the touchscreen interface, and that they would try to put those sorts of things in front of you instead of the typical mouse and keyboard interface that you're used to with Windows. They need to do that, but it needs to actually be good. It was not good before. The thing for Surface stuff was not great. They have not tackled it. But they haven't necessarily been incentivized to do it really, like it's not like Surface tablets were burning up the charts and they were like, we got to get this right. And vice versa. But on the gaming front, I think if they really want to do this, they really need to do this. And they really need to do it well, because if they're going to get out there and really try to say everything's an Xbox, we need to, and that is going to be part of their device strategy going forward, they need to make sure that the Xbox interface, whatever it ends up being, if it resembles the current Xbox interface or if they opt for something new, they need to make sure that that's good and effective. They also may need to make sure that whatever they're building plays nice with other PC store fronts, because I do think that if they launch a device and say, hey, it's really good for playing Game Pass stuff, and it's, you know, going to play your existing Microsoft Store library. And Steam is a weird backdoor thing. They're like, you can kind of make it work, but none of the work we did to make Windows friendlier helps you with Steam. I think that's a non-starter. Again, it's just like they will have made a PC handheld that kind of has an even more frustrating interface than some of the PC handhelds that are out there right now. And I don't think that's going to help them in the long run. So I don't know, man. They probably will. I suspect they're aware of that. And so, yeah, this is kind of the talk that this device may ship later this year, which I think, you know, maybe sounds a little early when you consider some of the things they've said specifically about some of their handheld experiments. But I also think they've had a long enough time in terms of, like, they've been out there talking about their desires to make Windows better for these types of devices. They've been out there talking about their desires to be in the handheld space. They have been working towards this goal, meandering towards it at first, but, you know, this makes it sound like that they're getting a lot more focused and that they're actually working with a partner that might make it a reality. And so I you know, this seems like something that, you know, again, this seems like a very doable thing. Nothing about this strikes me as like these are things that have to happen no matter what. I think there's only going to be an increased call for making Windows better on these handheld devices. And if they don't do it, then it's another reason for the SteamOS approach to succeed. Bazite, or, you know, maybe not Bazite, but it's another reason for people to spend more time experimenting with, like, well, maybe Linux is the answer for this, and maybe we don't do Windows at all. And I think the last thing Microsoft wants corporately as a company across the board is to lose yet another sector of this kind of, you know, like they don't really have a good set-top box strategy. They're seeding ground there. You know, the Xbox is not the preferred device in that space. This is a nascent space that if they do it right, they can dominate it, or at the very least, they can do it better than Sony does, which will help them in a gaming capacity to some degree. But they can't fuck it up. Otherwise, you know, the Steam Deck will continue to get better at you know, marked intervals as they see fit, and Microsoft will get shut out of it again. So I think that they kind of can't afford to fuck this one up. But also I think the space is still just nascent enough to where they've got some wiggle room. You know, they've got some time to figure it all out and figure out what the hell they actually want to make. And how they want to get it in front of people. I don't know. I think it's potentially really exciting. I love to see further development in the kind of handheld PC space. And we'll see how it all fits together. Like the kind of weird part about all this is that, you know, we have these conversations largely separately from the existence of the Switch, simply because the Switch hardware is so old, and that it is a closed system and what have you. Obviously, the Switch 2 will continue to be a closed system, but it will have more power at its disposal. And so it will kind of, just by virtue of these other devices existing alongside it, they will by their very nature be competing with each other to an extent. And a lot of that will come down to the Switch 2's third-party support, in terms of like, hey, you know, yeah, you could get a Switch 2 and just play Nintendo games on it. That worked well for the existing Switch, and that's awesome. But there is that audience out there that does want some of these other larger games that are shipping on PC and shipping in all these other places. And how well will the Switch 2, you know, work when it comes to those things? Sounds like it'll do just fine. And I'm sure that when all is said and done, the Switch 2 will probably outsell most of these other devices out there. But I'm not necessarily talking about simply a sales success. I'm talking about what is actually going to be the best device to play the most number of games, and what's going to be the device you would recommend as like, oh, here's the friendliest device. Here's the device you can just pick up and go. Like that may very well be the Switch 2. They've got experience at making a very friendly consoleized device, and they'll do it again. But maybe it will be one of these other things as this software continues to get better. Maybe you will say like, well, hey, it's not as smooth as an experience as the Switch 2 is when it comes to turning it on and downloading games and whatever, but you are running the games better. You are getting access to a larger library of games. It's open, so you can put whatever you want on it if you want to go that route with it. Like, those are all things that will hold appeal to different segments of the audience in a way that, for some, may actually outpace their desire to play first-party Nintendo games. Crazy as that sounds. But I don't know. It's setting up a very interesting confrontation and a showdown between all these different devices. If we assume that Microsoft has a Windows handheld out later this year, if we assume that Switch 2 is out maybe this summer or something like that, and obviously the other players in the space looking to update their existing devices and whatever else, and yeah, I don't know. I think that's a cool place for this space to be. And I think that, we'll end up in a situation where the different devices will appeal to different people depending on what you're doing. And then Sony, of course, will come along eventually. I don't know, like it sounded like their efforts were relatively early in a way that, shipping this year might be out of the question for them. But, that remains to be seen. I wonder, oh man, I got an itchy nose all of a sudden. If there's an element to this on the Microsoft side of like, hey, you know what? We do our best work when we beat Sony to market. And this is, if they're looking at this as like, hey, here's a new market. This is a new device, a new sector. And we need to make sure we take it to everybody as best we can. They're not going to sit there and go like, we're going to out Mario the people that make Mario. That's not, no one's dumb. But if Microsoft can get out there and establish like a good mainstream device, because the Steam Deck's not quite there yet. When a game doesn't work on Steam Deck, you don't know why. If you're not savvy on this stuff already, and that stuff can be a little weird. And so I think if they have a better, friendlier, more mainstream, simpler, I'm hesitant to say dumbed down, but that's kind of what we're talking about here, is like something that like you can pick up and turn on and it's reliable in a way that Windows often isn't. So we'll see. But it's reliable. It lets you know what it's doing and why, and it works like a console. Like that's kind of the thing, right? So we'll see. Obviously a ton of ins and outs on that one, yeah, not the least of which is that, a lot of these games you would view as Xbox exclusives, which is not a word that makes sense anymore. But a lot of these games will end up on the Switch, and if Sony's handheld eventually ships and it just kind of plays games, like presumably those games would be available there as well. But it's not a software, it's not about the games for once when it comes to this, or it's not about Microsoft's games specifically, outside of the concept of Game Pass, maybe making those games more attractive there. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's exciting. It's cool to see the stuff heating up. There's the one more bit, or a couple more bits in this Windows Central piece that are not necessarily about the handheld. They're saying that hey, there's updated Xbox controllers. Not necessarily something, nothing that's really attached to when it will ship or whatever, but basically that, the next Xbox controller, whenever that may be, will have like kind of the direct to cloud functionality built in. This was the highly touted feature that Google Stadia controllers had, where the controller itself can connect directly to Wi-Fi. So it's not going, Bluetooth or 2.4 to a device, and then that device is connected to the internet and it goes here. Like it's just one fewer hop. And they like that because it can help them reduce latency ever so slightly more when it comes to this cloud stuff. Or at least that's the idea. Windows Central is also saying that tentatively the next Xbox console, the actual premium successor to the Xbox Series X, is how they put it, is slated for 2027, and that that device has been greenlit all the way up to the CEO. But again, interestingly, you know, they're kind of saying, and I'll just read this a little bit from the piece here. It says, it seems that the next gen Xbox consoles will be closer to Windows than ever before, reducing the amount of work developers have to commit to when porting from PC. I understand that they will continue to sport backwards compatibility with the legacy Xbox games too, however, which is what we were talking about with the handheld. And, you know, it kind of gets into the idea that Sarah Bond is running a team about that type of backwards compatibility. And so, you know, if we're getting Xbox consoles that are maybe a little bit closer to PC and they still want to maintain their backwards compatibility, maybe you end up with that work appearing on the handheld as well. Even if it doesn't launch with it, maybe they get there eventually. And that maybe this is something that eventually just straight up works on Windows 11. I feel like that, or, you know, maybe it'll be Windows 12 by then. Who can say? Windows 27 H2 is looking to and so I would be interested in seeing that type of unification across the Xbox devices, is to see them kind of more approach Windows a little bit more. I would love to see them be more open devices as well, and not. It would be great if the next Xbox could run Steam, as ridiculous as that sounds. It would be nice if we were just like, here's a fancy PC for your TV. Like if Xbox just kind of backdoored their way into making Steam machines, or the Phantom, or, you know, whatever joke you want to make there. I think that would be cool, because I like PCs. I like to use, I like to have weird PCs. Like these handhelds are weird PCs. And so something like that, I think that's kind of cool. Especially if it has actual power and, you know, like some things built in to help it kind of reach 4K the way it needs to, and whatever power looks like in 2027. I don't even know. But yeah, okay. So Windows Central kind of is making the same, you know, hopes or whatever that I am saying. Phil Spencer has teased in previous interviews a desire to support third-party storefronts on Xbox hardware, including the Epic Store, GOG, Itch, and even Steam. So maybe we get there. Maybe, you know, if they do this consoleized version of Windows really, really well, if they knock it out of the park, they're like, hey, this is great. You've made this handheld experience really, really sing. Like, this thing feels like a console, but it's running real Windows. Best of both worlds. Awesome. If they can do that, and then, you know, instead of just like, oh, now we're going to go make another closed down console and whatever, if instead it's like, hey, you know, this exact same platform that we have here on our handheld, we're going to apply that to the console, and obviously it'll be more powerful because it's more expensive, and it's going to be, well, maybe not more expensive, you know, but hey, it's going to be more powerful because it's our premium high-end console. I think that's kind of cool. And I think that's something that probably ends up working out to benefit PC players as well, because, you know, it means that you'll have anyone that was making an Xbox game before ends up making, you know, like just spending that time on making sure that their PC version runs on a wider variety of devices and what have you. I think that's probably a good thing across the board. And acknowledges, you know, that maybe the Xbox hardware story is not where it needs to be. Again, this is all stuff that I think if the Xbox was selling in its current form, and you know, PlayStation wasn't kicking its ass around the world, you know, we wouldn't be having these conversations. They'd be like, the Xbox is awesome, we love it, you should get one. Everyone is, but that's just not where they're at. But it's nice to see these things, you know, like if we take this as some of these plans starting to form and solidify, I think this is I would call this a somewhat tantalizing direction for them. I think this is like, if they get there and actually do this and actually have something that is a somewhat more open platform than they've had in the past, I think that's a really good thing for players. Because that means if you were to buy an Xbox, you would just be able to do a lot more with it. You can already, you can already go pay your $20 for dev mode on the existing Xbox and compile whatever. And there's still ways to get things onto a current Xbox. And so it's like kind of just like removing some of those barriers. And the thing that, Microsoft loses out on there is kind of like their 30% of Xbox game sales. But if we look at the trajectory of just Xbox hardware sales and all of that stuff to begin with, like, that's not where they're making their deals. They're making deals for Game Pass, and they're paying devs out on that. And, like, that's where so much more of their focus is than just straight up selling games on an Xbox. That, you could see a world in which they're willing to let that go. The larger piece of this that will be interesting, I guess. Well, I don't know. I guess they've kind of solved some of this. But one of the things that, like, they're still kind of technically charging for online play. Like, you still are paying them a subscription fee to play online. Like, that stuff gets folded into Game Pass now, or at least Game Pass Ultimate. Right? They've reworked the subscription services so many times that I'm not 100% on what gets you what. But like, that's something that the minute you open up your console and you're like, oh, Steam is on here, there is an element of like, well, and I'll tell you this, man. If you gave me an Xbox and said this thing also runs Steam, I would continue to use that Xbox for games on Game Pass. But I don't think I would ever buy a game out of the Microsoft Store. Unless that, well, if they've unified their device strategy well enough, and that really is just a PC game and you can play it anywhere, then maybe that doesn't matter as much as it does today. But like, if I could install Steam on an Xbox, if I were purchasing games, I would be purchasing the game from Steam. Because I think it's just a better platform for game sales across the board, and because it works on all of my devices. Now, maybe we eventually get to a point where, hey, the Microsoft Store is on all of those same devices, and it is kind of there no matter what. But Steam's friendly refund policies. I already have a significant Steam library, Steam family sharing, the ability for my wife to play my Steam games. Assuming that the kids ever get old enough for her to be able to take a deep breath and actually play a video game for a change. I gave her my old Steam Deck, and I think she used it like twice. But like those sorts of things, along with like no subscription fee for access to some of those online services and what have you, that holds some appeal. So I think, for Microsoft to truly get to the other side on this stuff, I think there's probably still some more work to be done. Whatever, they're not dumb. They know that, I'm sure. Like, if they're willing to do all of this work, and if they truly are, and again, we're just putting this off a Windows Central report, none of this is official, but I do think that a lot of it makes a lot of sense. I think that they wouldn't be going down this road at all unless they were willing to go down this road all the way at this point. So we'll kind of see where that ends up for them. I don't know, man. I think that they probably need not only some success stories on the Xbox side of things, but I also think that Windows itself is, in need of a better, when was the last time someone wrote something about Windows that was like, this new thing that Windows is doing is just great? It's not. It's hey man, they're taking screenshots of your screen every 10 seconds so that an AI processor can read all your passwords. You trust that, right? Like, it's not, it's people going like, hey, how come every time I open the settings app on Windows 11 it tries to sell me on Microsoft 365? How come it's constantly trying to sell me subscriptions to dog shit that I will never, ever, 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 ever subscribe to? Like, how come why have they put more ads into Windows 11? Why is Windows 11, why is Windows 10 ending, why are they ending support for Windows 10 when there are going to be like a billion machines out there suddenly not getting security updates? Like, that seems like an incredibly reckless thing for them to be doing in a world where most of those machines are not able to upgrade to Windows 11. And their answer of, you should buy a new PC, is like, dude, fuck you. Do you know how much stuff ends up in landfills every fucking, like, all these machines still work. They're perfectly capable. Like, you're basically telling me install Linux. You should probably put Linux on these things. And Windows 11 is not that different from Windows 10. I like Windows 11 just fine, for the most part, as a successor to Windows 10. It's totally okay. But it's not some dramatic departure from Windows 10 that you're like, well, this is why we've got to end support for Windows 10. Like, the TPM module matters, and there's security stuff, and there's stuff, right? But come on. Put out a version of Windows 11 that doesn't require that TPM stuff that people can use to upgrade their Windows 10 machines and be done with it. Like, just why are we doing this? Why are we fucking doing this? Because it has no corporate value to them, because they're like, oh, those people are not going to subscribe to this and that. And like, is it just like, come on. I don't know. I mean, I think that stuff is kind of ridiculous. But at the same time, I think that this seems like a really strong, or whatever, this seems like a potentially strong path forward for the Xbox brand. Like, these sound like devices that I would want to own. Whereas if it was just like, hey, we've made another Xbox and it's more powerful, and then there's going to be the PlayStation 6 and it'll be exactly the same. And hey, like, if they didn't change a thing and just kept going down this road, like, that's not a path forward for them. It's pretty clear at this point, And so I think the changes they've made on the software side of just going, fuck it, dude, these games are going to go everywhere. And if they decide to open up this hardware in ways that just give players more choice and more functionality, and even if it's not necessarily inside of the Xbox ecosystem, like, again, those become devices that I would want to own. I would want to buy one of those. Like, I was thinking the other day, like, it's like, it'd be cool to have like a set, like something on my TV that I could do emulation stuff with. And I was like, oh, you idiot, you already have a fucking big PC hooked up to that television, you just never use it. And I was like, yeah, that's right, that is pretty stupid. And then I was going to turn it on the other day, and I was like, I don't want to I got to plug in a mouse, and I got to set up the TV tray over here with a mouse and keyboard on it that's set in front of the TV, and then I got to do this, and then I don't want to fucking do that. And so I didn't. So if you gave me a more convenient solution to that wasn't just a Raspberry Pi, because I want more power than that, then I think, I don't know. I think that there's a path there. I think that, again, those sound like devices that I would get use out of. And I am not getting a ton of use out of my Xbox currently, because I'm just playing those games on PC. When it comes to third-party games, when it comes to first-party games, because those games just appear on PC now. Like, there's not a lot of great, in my particular situation, there are not a ton of great reasons to turn on the Xbox Series X right now. And I suspect I'm not necessarily alone in that. And as more people upgrade their PCs or whatever they decide to do, it's only going to grow. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think more people are going to go, I'm going to buy an Xbox. As much as Game Pass can be a compelling reason to buy that stuff. Bright Lord asks, what about PS5? It's like, well, my daughter has to play Sonic Superstars somewhere, and she's playing it on PS5. So yes, the PS5 is getting more use than the Xbox. Yeah, and so this Windows Central article, says, thanks to the Xbox Series S, Microsoft already has a large amount of games that could be more easily ported to a handheld type system too. The strong possibility there, these future systems will remain backwards compatible, ensures that those of us who are digitally locked to the Xbox ecosystem will have a place to upgrade to in the future. Future Xbox games will likely be Windows oriented, hopefully with Xbox Play Anywhere as a default licensing model. And then says, like, of course we can only speculate on price and specs and features and developer support and whatever. So, but yeah, that seems like a solid path. That seems like a solid and interesting path forward for Microsoft when it comes to gaming hardware, whether we want to call it Xbox or whatever you want to call it. Like, that seems like an interesting path forward for them for games. And those are devices that I would be interested in getting and using for sure. Like a better handheld that was better at running all of, let's assume it's a little, like, ever so slightly more powerful than the stuff that's on the market right now, because we're talking about end of the year. And let's assume that they actually do a good job of consoleizing Windows 11. Like, I think that that's a really compelling thing. The thing that, holds back the Steam Deck, I think, from this kind of larger, more mainstream conversation is that sort of stuff like, it can't run Call of Duty because of anti-cheat. You can't run Call of Duty under Linux because of anti-cheat. And I think that is enough of a hindrance to enough people that, it's going to be the sort of thing that if the Steam Deck became or remained the dominant device in this space, people go like, well, wait a minute, why can't I fucking play the games I want to play? Like, oh, because it's running Linux. And if anything, it actually starts to make Linux sound underwhelming or underpowered, or people develop a negative attitude towards Linux because it doesn't play the games that they want it to play. And so, yeah, a kick-ass Windows device in that space, I think, has a real interesting chance at dominating that space because, obviously, it could run all of the stuff that runs on a Steam Deck and the things that won't run on a Steam Deck and still be an open device that you could still install whatever fucking insane-ass shit you want to run because it's a PC. That's all I want. Let's take one more break here, and we'll come back. Talk a little bit about, I don't know, man, Tony Hawk and Death Stranding and all this video games. Be right back. One of the important things about, running a business is figuring out the things that you have time to tackle yourself, the things that you are like, okay, this is my full attention needs to go here, and the things that you can trust someone else with. And, there's a lot of different services and a lot of different things out there for different parts of running an online business. But for selling things online, really only one matters, and that's Shopify. Shopify powers online shopping for all kinds of brands. Momofuku to Mattel. All of them rely on Shopify because nobody does selling better than Shopify. It's the Shopify. It's the Shopify. It's home of the number one checkout on the planet. And the not so secret that ShopPay, a little secret sauce that helps boost conversions up to 50%. So way fewer abandoned carts and way more sales getting completed. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform had better be ready to sell wherever your customers are. And that means not just online. If you've got a store, if you're selling stuff out of the trunk of your car, if social feed, anywhere in between, Shopify can help keep all of that sane for you, both from an inventory management perspective, as well as making sure that you've got a safe, secure place for customers to buy your stuff. It's not a secret. Businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Mattel uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Jeff. That's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Jeff to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Jeff. All right, we've gotten confirmation about the way Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 is going to work in the confines of this upcoming remaster of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4. It has been confirmed. We were talking last week about it, and there was like one sentence in the product description that made it sound like they were going to change up the way that Tony Hawk 4 works. They are, in fact, going to do that. It has been confirmed that instead of the more kind of open, I guess you would call it Grand Theft Auto-esque, and that you are skating up to a quest giver, and then you are getting a quest, and then you are completing said quest, and sometimes that has a time limit attached to it, that they are going to remake that game around the kind of classic structure of the previous games, giving you an overall timer and rebuilding, I guess, a lot of the goals in that game to function the same way, and so it will work more like the original trilogy instead of that kind of half-assed, open-ended thing that they did in Tony Hawk 4. I always felt that Tony Hawk 4 kind of didn't. You don't get to Tony Hawk's Underground. You don't get to Thug without Tony Hawk 4, because I think Thug does what Tony Hawk 4 was trying to do, like, correctly, whereas Tony Hawk 4 feels like a lot of this concept of kind of cramming this, like, open world mission concept into this skateboarding game was a little half-baked. The new move in Tony Hawk 4, the spine transfer, is not like as groundbreaking as some of the stuff they did before. And so, like Tony Hawk 4, I would say in a lot of ways, Tony Hawk 4 is kind of the forgotten Tony Hawk, because it exists past that first trilogy, but before Thug kind of shifted it in that new direction properly. And so it is this bridge game. Anyway, according to Eurogamer, and this has been reported in a number of different places, Eurogamer can confirm the objectives for the players to complete in Tony Hawk 3 and 4 will all be based on a timer for both games. There will also be a free skate mode, which has no timer, as well as a speed run and single session modes, which is the same type of mode list as the previous 1 and 2 remaster. The free skate mode in Tony Hawk 3 and 4 will not let players complete challenges in the same way they were able to in the original Pro Skater 4 career mode. And so it's that free skate mode is not going to open up some sort of. I would like to know why. I think that's sort of the missing piece of this story. Is that no one has like a good answer. Like, I can speculate like 4 or 5, well, maybe not 4 or 5, 2 or 3 different viable answers for why you would do this. But I have not heard a good explanation for this. I think it could be anything from like, hey, there's way less VO. If we do this, like, there's, all of it comes down to budget, I guess, ultimately. But that's all of anything anyone is developing ever is going to come down to budget, whether it's time, whether it's money. It's the same thing. But I would probably speculate here that it's a mix of like, okay, what are the things that would be expensive to do about this? It would be engineering. You know, you've already got these other remasters that are built around this 2-minute timer. And so doing anything different than that probably takes a long time. Doing all of the NPCs, bringing their audio in, maybe all of that audio is in shitty, low quality. So suddenly you're like, oh no, now we need to re-record a ton of VO. I might also say that there's a fair amount of stuff in Tony Hawk 4 that has not aged well. Like the mini game where a pimp is getting women to slap each other, like that stuff that you're just like, yeah, maybe you don't want to put that in. Maybe you don't put that in here. You know, that's probably not a make or break reason, but I'm sure it's on some list somewhere about like, maybe we don't want it. Maybe we don't need to recreate. Maybe we don't need to recreate all of these dog shit ass mini games that at the time made a lot of sense because that's what games were. A bunch of dog shit mini games. People were like, Grand Theft Auto, great. I hope there's some great racing and taxi missions in here for me to do. Like, fuck you. No one wants that shit anymore. And so I think that there's just design sensibilities like that you just go like, yeah, I don't know. I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need to play tennis in this game. Like, I don't need to play the dog shit fucking tennis mini game in Tony Hawk 4 again. I'm good. It's okay. We'll live. So I don't know. Like, I am always going to be on the side of they should just remake the thing and it should be as close to the thing as possible because that's why people liked the thing in the first place. You know? And so like I do think that this is ultimately disappointing. At the same time, when I think about the time as someone who has played Tony Hawk 4 in this calendar year, the idea of a Tony Hawk 4 that has a classic mode, the idea of a Tony Hawk 4 classic mode, which is what they came to call in as they made more games that didn't have a timer, they eventually would go like, oh, we'll do in classic mode versions of these levels that actually do bring back the 2-minute timer, and we've revamped some of the goals and added some stuff like there. The idea of creating a classic mode version of the Tony Hawk 4 career, I think actually seems fucking awesome. Like, I want to play that. That sounds like something I want to see if it is done well, assuming it is done well. Having that come at the expense of the original experience, I think is again, like I said, I think that is actually that is disappointing. Because, you know, people who like that game for a reason. I like that game, but again, as someone who went back and played some Tony Hawk 4 in the year 2025 before any of this stuff got announced, I don't want to do that. That was my feeling on playing the Tony Hawk 4 career mode. Was you get a couple levels in and you're just like, dude, I'm fucking so sick of skating up to these people and activating this quest giver and doing, like, so many of these quests are so poorly written, and like it came out at a time when we're just kind of, you know, like the jackassification of Tony Hawk vis-a-vis Thug and Thug 2. They eventually, I think they got pretty good at making whatever that is. You know, you either like that or you don't. Tony Hawk 4 feels like they said, we're going to make the edgy Tony Hawk. And then so they put some of this extra stuff in it. You just go like, this is stupid. Like, when you go back and play it, I think it is significantly worse than it was upon release because so much of that stuff is so fucking corny. And I think Thug, again, as someone who has played some Thug 1 relatively recently, I think that at least feels like a moment in time. And you look at it and go like, yep. Yeah. That was us. We were them. We were they. That was Tony Hawk 4 feels like a weird half step that I think doesn't work out. regardless of how you feel about CKY2K and CKY3. We're not going to talk about CKY4 because it was bad. But, you know, like that, whatever, regardless of what you think about the Bum Fights DVD, when it comes to talking about that era of culture, I think that Tony Hawk 4 as a campaign doesn't lean in far enough. It's like the good thing about Thug 1 and eventually Thug 2 is that they embraced what it was, whereas Tony Hawk 4 feels like it's inching a little bit in that direction in a way that it's not entirely comfortable with, and a lot of these concepts feel new and weird, and it doesn't really do it and doesn't really nail it as well as you want it to, and it just kind of, a lot of it falls flat. So yeah, I don't know. The idea of a classic mode take on the Tony Hawk 4 levels and all of that stuff, because those are good levels, and I do think that is potentially that's something I very much want to play, because that's like a good repurposing of those levels in a way that I would be happy to see. So yeah, I mean, as much as I can say, like, from a traditionalist standpoint, it is disappointing that they are not remaking that game as it was, warts and all. As someone who just wants to play some good ass skateboarding video games, this actually kind of sounds like the best of both worlds, because it's the Tony Hawk 3 campaign, which is fucking incredible, and then a fresh take on levels you're familiar with, which actually sounds really exciting in this day and age to get something actually new, while still being familiar, you know? We'll see how well that works, because I think a lot of the Tony Hawk 4 levels are too big, or they're bordering on too big to do a 2-minute timer and do, you almost wonder if they would chop some of them in half, not necessarily in terms of loading time, but like, hey, we got 2 start points in this level. You're going to do 10 goals over here and 10 goals over here. And, I don't know. Maybe that's a broken way of thinking about it too, but I don't know. The other thing I hope is that when they go to have new dialogue for the airport level in Tony Hawk 3, that they don't take out the part where they talk about Petaluma. Because everyone I know who skated in Petaluma was extremely fucking excited about Petaluma being mentioned in Tony Hawk 3's airport level. So I hope they don't fuck that up. That would be criminal. That's the skate park in Petaluma that had just recently opened when Tony Hawk 3 came out, is still there. God damn it. So don't fuck this up. What else? Death Stranding 2. Talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and it was confirmed that yes, the game is out in the summertime. I think I had said maybe more like July or August, but I guess June 26th is what we will get for Death Stranding 2 on the beach. That was confirmed at a South by Southwest panel, alongside an announcement of the expensive versions of the game that will come with like bonus machine guns and a statue of Magellan Man. As far as I can tell, Magellan Man is a giant goop angel made of goo with a spaceship for a head. I don't know, man. Some in-game stuff, exoskeletons, and yes, an early unlock for the machine gun. There's just enough, and a patch. You get an in-game patch that says, "Why me?" What the an in-game patch that I assume you can put on your character that says, "Why me?" There's a new trailer that came out alongside this. Yeah. Sure. You should watch the trailer. If you are the sort of person who wants to watch those sorts of trailers, then you've probably already watched it. I don't know. It looks like more of that. I think my takeaway from the reveals of Death Stranding 1 and what that game ended up really being by the time you get to the end of it, I guess I would say I appreciate that these games are being made because no one else is making them at this size and scope. But watching the Death Stranding 2 trailer was a real reminder for me of like, oh, I don't want to play this at all. Yeah, I don't care about, I could not, I don't care about this. I don't want to walk. I don't want to walk. I don't want to do this. This is not, you could maybe say, oh, well, there's just enough stuff in the trailer about guns and gun culture that you are led to believe like, oh, I bet there's going to be way more actual shooting in this game than there was in the first one. And maybe that will lead to some more varied gameplay than just walking with stuff. But Jesus Christ, man. I don't. The trailer is very funny because it's like, we found the beach, and 6 months later, the beach is lined with servers. And you're like, yeah, okay. Weird goo computers hanging out on the beach. That's the future that Kojima wants you to live in. I do like his style. I do like that his style of editing trailers is exactly what it has always been, where he does the thing where it starts to show credits like it's the end of the trailer, but then characters are still talking and they're saying fucking like just ridiculous shit. They're just like shaking your head going like, and then there's like 3 more minutes of trailer. And then that happens again. I like his specific style when it comes to the video game trailer, that specific thing of we're showing the credits like it's the end of the trailer, but fuck you, there's way more. Like, it's such a specific like Kojima game thing that I appreciate that he is still at it when it comes to that stuff. And then they get to a point where they start like introducing the characters and who's playing them and here's voicing them, and it just is this like murderer's row of the dumbest character names in video games. Like it's Puppet Man. It's like whatever. Marionette guy is here, and you're like, all right, yeah. Fuck, dude. The first game came out when my first child had kind of just been born. And one of the things that made me want to play that game a little bit less was that we had a baby, and there was a baby crying in the house on a fairly regular basis. And so the idea, so you get to a point where you're like, huh, whenever you hear that type of crying. And so the idea of playing a game where there's a crying baby coming out of your PlayStation controller speaker every so often was just not acceptable at that point in my life. It's just like, I fucking fuck this. Because every time it happens, I like look at the door and go, shit, did something happen? What's happening? And it was just like, dude, fuck this. Fuck this. And so now in this game, the baby is a little bit older and is starting to walk for the first time. And as someone who has a baby who is literally about to walk any moment now, like she is cruising everywhere and just about ready to start walking, I'm just like, nah. Like I'm not interested in seeing people fucking roll around on the ground with babies attached to them and getting all bruised up and all this other shit. I'm just like, yeah, I don't fucking need this in my life right now. Or rather, no part of Death Stranding 1 was good enough to overpower that. No part of the game was good enough to be like, oh, it wasn't like a situation of like, man, I wish I could play this, but I'm too traumatized by the baby crying. It was like, this is fucking already one of the most fucking boring and fucking self-indulgent things I've ever seen. And there's also this baby crying thing in it. I'm fucking good. Whatever, man. I'm super fucking done with this. I'm going to go like some ropes and some bridges, and then that's it. I don't want to do any more of this. And so I don't know. I look at this and go like, yep, this looks like more of that. I hope you're happy. Fucking creeps. You fucking weird goo freaks. Like, I want to see the goo men. I want to cover my mouth and move quietly in my walking game. Like, I don't have it. I don't have it for this. Like, it's, I had my fill of it in the first game. So watching this trailer, like my general feeling of it is like, I suppose I will probably have to encounter this game directly at some point in my future. But like, this seems like something I could read about and watch some cutscenes and be like, okay, and get the thing I want to get out of it. But I do not think I am willing to fucking like strap on the fucking gear and hold down the buttons and walk across whatever country this game is set in. Just to see which celebrity friends of Kojima's show up. You know, I'm good. I'm good. And it was nice to get a reminder of that. Because like, it's easy to forget. And then you go and you look up you look up what actually happened in Death Stranding 1 by the end of it, and you remember what it all was, and the nature of the beach and Princess Beach and all of it, and you just go like, I can't, I cannot, I will not fall for this again. Speaking falling for it again, Mark Cerny's out here talking up the PlayStation 5 Pro. This is kind of in conjunction with AMD's new hardware and the RDNA 4 architecture. From the sounds of this, they are looking to evolve some of the upscaling technology used by the PlayStation 5 Pro. And AMD and Sony have put together a project called Project Amethyst. And the RDNA 4 upscaler is actually something that Sony helped out on to a certain extent. That is not to say that you will see it in PlayStation 5 games immediately, but it is something that they are planning, according to Digital Foundry, that basically what they're hoping to get is something that is very similar to the FSR 4 upscaler inside of the PS5 Pro for games shipping in 2026. So the current models, the current version of PSSR, which is the PlayStation Super Resolution machine learning based upscaling feature that they put into the PS5 Pro, is something that will, much like versions of FSR will be upgraded on the PC over time, and you will go from FSR 2 to 3, and you can use those on kind of any graphics hardware you got. That is something that they will eventually bring to the PS5 Pro. Digital Foundry has some video of FSR 4 in action, but it's that's not immediately germane to it. But yes, that is the plan on the Sony side, is to roll this in. And so they did an interview here with Mark Cerny, which says like RDNA 4 and the hardware in the PS5 Pro are completely separate designs, which is why I speak in terms of re-implementation on PS5 Pro when I talk about the new upscaling network used in FSR 4. I'm definitely looking forward to a future with co-developed hardware features for machine learning that will dramatically increase the interoperability. So it sounds like they can't just drop FSR 4 and all of its bells and whistles into the PS5 Pro, but that they will be able to take some of the things built for that and put it into the current hardware. and that their goal in the future, presumably when we talk about the next generation of PlayStation hardware, that, you know, if we assume that they're going to continue working with AMD here in the future, which I don't see why they wouldn't, that they would be looking to kind of try to unify this even a little bit further here. And so Cerny says, FSR4 and this next evolution of PSSR are a paradigm for our future. Going forward, we expect to have our own implementations of each of the algorithms developed through the collaboration. And there may be slight tweaks to them in our world, as technical targets for console game development and PC game development tend to be slightly different. For example, as I said in the PS5 Pro technical video in December, 60 frames per second gaming is very important in the console world, but the PC world doesn't quite think about frame rate the same way. That's not did he actually say that back in December? Because that seems backwards. I'm going to read that again here. This is a quote from Cerny as part of this. As I said in the PS5 Pro technical video in December, 60 frames per second gaming is very important in the console world, but the PC world doesn't quite think about frame rate the same way. I might say if 60 frames per second gaming is very important in the console world, then the console world is failing miserably. I agree with you on a basic level that 60 frames per second should be very important in the console world, but game developers keep locking their games at 30 just so they can turn on slightly better ray tracing on the PS5 Pro. Like, that's still happening. And he's right that the PC world doesn't quite think about frame rate the same way. Yeah, because over there, you know, this monitor's 360 hertz, and we're talking about much higher resolution, much higher frame rates than 60. So yeah, I guess he's not wrong there, but I don't know, man. Like, that is such a disappointment in a way. It is such a, like, it underscores a certain type of failing that the console market is undergoing, because yes, 60 frames per second gaming is very important in the console world. I agree, but no one is hitting it outside of, you know, I don't know, you know, if he's speaking for Sony, like, you know, they certainly have some games that hit 60, but even they are playing the fidelity versus performance toggle game. Yeah. I have more to say about this that I cannot say at this time, but we will get into it in the very near future about some frame rate options and conversations. Nintendo Switch Online with their emulated games. I don't really think much of the service on account of, you know, can emulate a lot of games a lot of different ways. But they have added a couple of fucking bangers, man. They have added the two games that matter. The last two games that matter are now available to you if you are a subscriber to the Switch Online, whatever tier gets you Game Boy games, because they have added Donkey Kong and Mario's Picross. That's it. We're done. Wrap it up. The Switch is complete. By Donkey Kong for the Game Boy, I of course mean the game more commonly referred to as Donkey Kong 94. Which is the game that eventually brought you all of the Mario versus Donkey Kong, Mario versus Donkey Kong, Mario and the Minis, like all of that sort of stuff came from this game. And I think this game does it better than almost any of the ones that followed it. So those are two games that are very much worth playing. Of course, you know, you've got a lot of different ways to play Picross these days, but Mario's Picross was my first back then. And so I would say that game is incredibly, very much worth playing as a Picross game. It's a hell of a Picross game. And Donkey Kong 94 is fantastic. You should check it out. So check it out. If you have not played those games, you can. If you've not played the Jackbox games because you just don't have a platform that can run them, you're in luck. Eurogamer is reporting that some Jackbox games will be coming to smart TVs for free in an ad-supported format. It's basically like a cloud streaming type of thing. They say down the line, the entire catalog will be available for a subscription fee. They don't have a release date, but this spring they're looking to launch on 1 or 2 smart TV platforms. So that's, that ends up being manufacturer specific. It's kind of like the pre-iPhone era of phones where like the LG storefront is different from the Samsung storefront and different from, it's kind of a weirdly splintered ecosystem. I think this is fantastic. This is cool. They say here, it has always been our goal to bring these games to as many people as possible and make them as easy to play as we can. That's why we are announcing a new Jackbox app that will allow you to play Jackbox games on your smart TV and other platforms. So yeah, man, doing that in terms of like that's a good, that's a way to do a cool, good streaming thing. That's a good use of cloud infrastructure of like, hey, we can video stream this stuff to you. You're already using your phones to play it no matter what. So like the on-screen thing is like where it's played and how it's played is somewhat incidental. The timing is not crucial. It's not some big, input latency sensitive sort of thing. And that seems like a thing that should have happened by now, honestly. It's surprising in a weird way. If these, maybe they need to like look a little more forward here. If these TV storefronts are going to be a hassle, maybe they just need their own platform. Maybe they just maybe they need a Jackbox box, and you take that and you plug it into your TV and use it to play Jackbox games on. Tether your phones to the Jackbox box and play it that way. I don't know. Yeah. No word on which games are going to be a part of this beta, but it sounds like that they will bring some games out for free, ad supported in the beta, and then again, the report is that the entire catalog will be available for a subscription fee. I think that's I was thinking about this yesterday. What's the best way to actually offer the Jackbox games to people? What is the best business model for that? I think what they've been doing, in terms of selling them works well. But I think if you think about this push as an opportunity to bring more people, some of whom may not be as technically savvy and may not want to own a video game platform or a PC or whatever, then yeah, man, doing it as part of a TV app makes a ton of sense. And, there's no reason not to do it on, this stuff's already on Apple TV, right? Subscription is weird. Because I mean, unless you're a heavy user of Jackbox, unless you are like, how many Jackbox games do you need to play a month in order to make a subscription feel good and not like a thing you signed up for and forgot about? And then 6 months later went, these fucking guys. Like you would almost want like a credit-based system. Or maybe the subscription is just like unlocks the full catalog and they do a rotation of ad-supported games or something. Maybe that's the way they end up doing it, is like, hey, this is going to have ads and we're going to rotate which games are available for free on the ad-supported side of things, but then you can pay for the subscription and whatever. But if that's how they do it, then maybe that makes more sense. But I was going to say, maybe it ends up being like, hey, I just want to play, like almost like when you go and do karaoke, like in Japan, or like that idea of like, okay, we're gonna rent this Jackbox for 3 hours because we're having a party and I got some people coming over and we're gonna play Jackbox, and so for the next 3 hours we can do it, and then it will lock back up and whatever. Like a monthly subscription seems like a big And again, I'm sure that there are people out there that are playing Jackbox all the fucking time, and for them, that probably makes a ton of sense, and they're like, whatever, a subscription would be great. Especially if they are updating that stuff. I guess a subscription actually eventually becomes a bad deal for existing Jackbox players who are used to just buying them outright for like a relatively low fee. Like they don't charge that much for it, for each one, and they don't put them out that often. But I guess maybe if you were getting something that was a little more live content, I was just thinking the other day, and this is not necessarily, but Jackbox would be a company that could do it. Jackbox would actually be a company that has the goodwill and the quality and whatever and the tech, basically, I think, to maybe do this on the other side of some of this cloud stuff. We need more appointment-based gaming. You should be able to play Jackbox whenever you want, but there should be the equivalent of HQ trivia should exist in this day and age. The like once per day trivia game, the once per day Jackbox special, build a Jackbox game that is the equivalent of 1 versus 100. To like have some kind of live game show, have something live, have something with some juice, man, that's happening as you speak. Do it a couple of times a day to fit your time zones appropriately or whatever. HQ just did one a day back in the day. Get Rich Gallup in a suit and let him host a goddamn TV show on your goddamn cloud app is what I'm saying. It's what he was born to do. But yeah, as 1 versus 100 was coming up in conversations here and there, and I was thinking about how HQ trivia and everything was such a great moment in time. And I was thinking, man, someone needs to bring that back. But the thing that someone that needs to bring that back is Jackbox. I think Jackbox is the only operation that is like funny enough, but also has enough different a variety of different games that you could be playing live. They would have the chops to come up with some good live variants of their existing games, as well as some new games that were live. They need to do a live game. Jackbox needs to do a live game. They need to stop fucking around. Let Rich Gallup expense a suit and a green screen. And have him host the thing. Jackbox, if that is your real name. Mr. Box. Mike Builder, let this man buy a suit. No. All right. Anyway, Jackbox is coming to smart TVs. They should do that. That's a good idea. Speaking of good ideas, we were talking about Teon last week and their surprisingly cool run of games here, including that Terminator game. It was announced that they are working on an expansion, or a standalone expansion, is how it's being referred to RoboCop. RoboCop Rogue City will be getting this, well, and it's standalone, so it is called Unfinished Business. And that will be out this summer on consoles and PC. It will have some flashback missions where you will play as Alex Murphy. Which sounds kind of fun. RoboCop Rogue City is a cool game, and it's cool that they are making more of it. I will happily check that out. That's a game that had, some issues. It wasn't like the perfect video game or whatever, but like, man, when you think about how bad a RoboCop game has been and how many bad RoboCop games there have been, they nailed it in a way, and they nailed the tone of RoboCop in a way that most of the games never tried to. Even the good games, which was like, well, the good game, which is just the first arcade game that Data East made, probably the only good RoboCop game I'm thinking here. Is that it? That's it, right? There hasn't been. There was that fucking Xbox game. Jesus Christ. Yeah, RoboCop Rogue City is really the only. You know what? Most RoboCop stuff is bad. You know what's good? RoboCop. You know what's less good? RoboCop 2. You know what's bad? RoboCop 3. Then they made that cartoon, which is it's terrible, but like at least it's funny. And then they did a couple of TV shows, which I have to admit I have not watched. But RoboCop Rogue City might be the only other good RoboCop thing. The only other truly, and you know, even then, it's got some issues, but that's cool that they're making more of it. That'll be out this summer. Again, Unfinished Business. That's very exciting. Just let him get a suit and one of the Bob Barker microphones. I think the Bob Barker microphone aesthetic still works. It came and went again, you know. Now everyone's like holding a fucking lav mic up to their fucking mouth when they record their videos. What is this fucking dog shit that people are doing? I got a wireless lav and I'm holding it right here near my face so I can record this video. Fuck you. Put the microphone on like a goddamn professional. You look like a government informant trying to get the cops to kick down the door when you talk into a tiny mic like that. And you're like, oh my God, green slime, green jello. Like you're trying to get them to kick down the door. Stop it. Podcast@guard.bike is the email address. If you want to send in some emails, you can do it. I'll allow it. That is the only place to send them. Podcast@guard.bike is where you send your emails for the podcast. If you're sending them, I don't know where else you would send them, but don't send them anywhere else if you want them to be on the podcast. We've got some questions here. Jose in Puerto Rico writes in and says, I've decided to go PC by the time the next generation gets here. That should give me a couple of years to save up. I've been a console player for over 30 years now, but decided to make the switch for a couple of reasons. One, it feels like I'm missing out on the best version of most of the games I play, i.e. first-person shooters and graphical fidelity. And two, the older I get, the more I want the screen to be smaller and closer to my face. That's fair. I'm aiming to get whatever the top GPU is at that time and whatever other components I need to make my games run the best. Couple of questions for you. One, based on historical data. Hang on, let me get my historical data out. How long will a high-end PC last me? Could it be to where it will run games better for at least 2 generations? So, my historical data would indicate that yeah, sure. Depending. Like the way that this used to work is that, you know, consoles would come out and they would look miles beyond what the PC was capable of, and then the PC would catch up and go beyond that, and then the next console, then the PlayStation 2 would come out, and you were like, oh my God, you know, and we would go from there. That was how it worked for at least a little while there. Nowadays, you know, since everything is kind of using the same basic architecture, you know, you're seeing consoles is basically existing as like, hey, how much PC can you get for $700? You know, how much PC can you get for $500, $700, somewhere in that realm? And the answer is you can do all right. You know, the consoles do all right. You could do a lot better. Some games will be built in ways that take advantage of that additional power better than others. And so you'll end up with some games that you go like, you know, this doesn't really... 5090 is capable of running this game better, but is it the better that fits with the amount of money and the amount of blood and how many guys I had to suck off to get this 5090 in the first place? Like that sort of, you know, like how you have to do that math. And the nice thing there is that, you know, the specs will always move in a specific direction, right? Of just like, okay, well, you know, things are eventually going to require more power and require more of this and that. And so in some ways it's overkill and you're buying for the future, and what if that future never comes, and all of that. So, you know, you do have to kind of weigh a lot of that out. I don't think we have answers to that, because I think we're in some really weird unknown territory with GPUs, and we have been for the last handful of years here, for the last, let's call it 5 years. The 40 series. The 30 series was already headed in that direction, but I think as soon as the 40 series cards hit, it was like this real all bets were off type stuff, at least on the NVIDIA side of things. But AMD is coming along with like some very nice and more affordable cards. And so you could always go the other route of like, hey, get the best AMD card you can get, and then by the time that thing is feeling lackluster, you could probably get another one, and those two cards combined will probably have cost you less than the single NVIDIA card you would have tried to have get. You know? So I think that some of that just depends on how far you want to go and what you want to do there, you know. Your second question here. Shortage issues aside, how much more or less will it cost me? I've seen Reddit and game forums estimating between $4,000 and $6,000 to build a high-end PC. Is that right? Also, have GPU shortages always been an issue? No, GPU shortages were not always an issue. That is something that has really only been, I would say, over these last 3 generations of NVIDIA cards. But the pandemic really scaled up hoarding mentality on a lot of things like GPUs. And so you have this knock-on effect where even the recent release of the Intel cards, the Battle Mage cards that they put out, like those became very hard to find right at launch. I don't know if those are in wider availability now, if they've kind of solved that. But I've heard people say that AMD is actually really good at restocking right now, and that they expect to have cards on a fairly regular basis. So hopefully that will eventually outpace whatever scalpers are out there buying these cards right now and trying to flip them on sites that, you know, are there to sell fucking Pokemon cards, shoes. So the shortest, but your cost of, like, if you really want to go top end PC and you don't want to build it yourself, I was glancing at pre-built PCs the other day, because oftentimes that is the only way for you to get the hot GPU, because these OEMs are getting the stock that, you know, Newegg and Amazon are not. That there were opportunities to get a 5090 in a machine that was about $5,000. I don't know if that's still the case, but let me look real quick here and see. And who knows if they even have them in stock, honestly. Like that's kind of the other annoying thing here. But just as I wouldn't necessarily, I would say if you're going to go with a pre-built, I would definitely look at a few different places. I just fired up NZXT because I was looking at their keyboards the other day, and that's what reminded me of this. But they claim to have a PC with a 5090 in it for $5,000 right now. I couldn't tell you a single thing about the rest of its specs. Okay, I'm going to keep scrolling here. Ryzen 7 9800X 3D, sure. Yep. 64 gigs of RAM, 2 terabyte SSDs in their fancy, weird fucking light up case and all the bullshit. That's kind of the downside of buying a pre-built PC, is that all of them fucking suck. All of them are ugly as sin. Like, it's really nice cabling and really tight. You open it up and you're like, wow, this is the cleanest PC I've ever seen. But the way these pre-builts are going right now. But then It's every fucking RGB fan in the world inside. It's just fucking and glass. I do not need to see inside the case. I do not need lights inside the case. I don't want it. And I can't, and it seems like for me to disable some of the lights in the case that I have now, which I only see because it reflects on the wall behind the PC, I have to have software running on my PC to shut the fucking lights out. Like, it doesn't save it to the device properly. And so I have to load up the lighting management software and say, fuck you, turn it off. And all of that software is trash. Microsoft tried to build a Windows level, like, dynamic lighting function so you could just use like their stuff to govern all your lights, but the compatibility with most devices seems very low. Corsair IQ is a dog shit piece of software. Yes. Ultra What says it's time to bring back beige boxes. Yes, and it's time for those boxes to be fucking horizontal. It's time for us to lay our PCs down again. It's time for us to put a monitor on top of a big fucking box and go, yeah. It's time for our computers to have fucking keyholes on them and turbo buttons. Stuff that matters about personal computing. But yeah, so that is an option. I would rather have 128 gigs of RAM, but that's because I'm, editing video and doing other stuff like that. But they're selling that for $5,000. I don't know if they have that in stock. I don't know. Like, if you pushed that button, I don't know how long it would take for you to get that PC. If they have a 5090 in stock, I remember when I was trying to get my 3090, and I ordered a PC from Origin PC. That took quite some time for them to have the stock. And it took some time for, like, they had everything else. They needed a GPU. And then they got a GPU in and they shipped it to me. And that first GPU they shipped was dead. And so I had to say, hey, send me another one. And so they sent me the other one fast once I got someone on the phone, which took way longer than it should have. They were very quick to send me another one that was functional, and then I sent the broken one back in that box, and it was fine. But it was definitely a moment of just like, man, fuck, really? After all this time? But yeah, you could, I think that has been about the going price, and that'll fluctuate. But I feel like if you're dropping $5,000 on the PC, you should be getting some real serious shit. Now, you could debate all the pre-built PCs are using bad parts for fans and bad parts for I would say this PC here is, I chose pretty much every brand of part that's in it, the motherboard, the RAM, everything. When I got it it was not pre-built, it was built to order at that point. But I did not choose the fans. And I think the fans on this thing are way too fucking loud and way too fucking RGB for my tastes. So I'm looking at replacing all of the fans in this case with something quieter. I need to learn about fan curves. I don't know how to learn about fan curves. But I don't know how to do that. And I don't know if that would help me or not. But right now, when I go to, and this has been, this is not like a fast internet is doing, it's spinning faster, whatever. But like, when I go to download something from Steam, when I go to download a file from anywhere, but like a fast, like a fast connection, every single fan on this machine spins up. And it sounds like a goddamn jet engine, let alone when I launch a game. If I launch a game, the whole thing goes, yeah. And it's ridiculous. And so I don't know what I can do to my fan curves. I don't know what the right temperature should be, how much I should, how much I can kind of quiet down the, like lower the fans without the thing melting, like whatever it is. I don't know. But every other device in this case I chose. Power supply, like everything else is the brand I wanted, the thing I wanted. So, with the exception of the fans. And I think even then, like I chose the fans, but I think every fan they had as an option was not, it was not a knock to a fan. It was not, you know, it was like, these are our quiet fans. And I'm like, if these are your quiet fans, then what the fuck? Anyway. I've learned a lot about PCs and computing and building things and all of that stuff over the years, but that's something that I've just never, you know, the fan speed and what, how to set a fan curve and all of that. That's just something I've never, I have never learned. So like I've used water coolers before and stuff like that, but it's, yeah, just never got my mind around that stuff and what software to use to manage it and all of that stuff. I just never really got there with it. Anyway, Graham from, let's say, Maryland, MD. That's Maryland, right? Is asking about this. This has been going around, I guess. I thought that people would have like not bought into this, but here is the question. I've seen many people on different platforms claim authoritatively that the new Grand Theft Auto will cost $100 on release. From what I can tell, this claim originates from some analysts and not anything else, not even an evil, greedy Take-Two shareholder, but internet people decided to run with it. Are people actually convinced that Take-Two wouldn't see any risk at selling a game, even if it's a sequel to the best-selling thing of all time, for $30 above the typical MSRP? Do you think they could get away with it? I'm no Michael Pachter, but that seems so incredibly unlikely that I can't help but think that all the people repeating the claim are maybe kind of dumb? Maybe I'm kind of dumb? Thanks. Graham, both could be true. No, this was an analyst, and my understanding is that it is not a very well-regarded one also. Saying that he was like, oh, they could do it, and the quote was like, other developers are hoping or they would love to because that would mean that they could raise their prices too. It was that sort of thing. It wasn't even like it was like yeah, they could do this. I bet they could get away with this if they did it, and kind of a maybe they should kind of thing. And this is really boneheaded for a few different reasons. Again, the document this came out of is this like tome full of stuff that is just like it's suspect. It's a guy that like when I was not familiar with his work ahead of this, but when I kind of mentioned his name in a few different circles, it was a lot of like people going like, oh yeah, that guy has no fucking idea what he's talking about. I'm like, oh, okay. Not just with that, but just in general. So I guess take that for what it's worth. I don't know. But the gist of it was like, oh yeah, GTA could do this, and you know, other game publishers would be excited about this, and so that somehow turned into, once it got filtered through the fucking like news machine and the same TikTok disaster machine that is currently posting clips of the Death Stranding 2 trailer of the fucking dude putting on the headband and going, that's Solid Snake. Look at Solid Snake in Death Stranding 2. Kojima said in an interview that this actor is the guy he would have play Solid Snake, and here he is putting on a bandana in a game. So that's Solid Snake. Neil is Solid. Did you know that Solid... It sucks. And, you know, short form video like that, you don't really have room for nuance, right? And so all of this $100 GTA stuff got boiled down into like, analyst thinks GTA could cost $100 on release. And then you play telephone one or two more times from that, and you get people going like, I heard GTA is going to be $100. Like, no, that's Will there be versions of GTA 6 for sale that cost over $100 or more? Absolutely. I mean, fuck, man. The collector's edition of Death Stranding 2 is like 200 and something, right? It's 220, 230, whatever it was. So, yeah. This is how they tackled that problem. This is how they solved that issue, right? It's not, let's make the base model versions of games $100 or more. It's, hey, we're going to sell you the game plus the season pass. And then if you buy the physical edition, you're going to get some stupid thing, some cheaply made statue that you can throw on a shelf. And we're going to charge you $149 for it or whatever. $220, whatever the Death Stranding thing is. But they will upsell you on those editions of the game. And big fans of those games will want that. There are plenty of Death Stranding, plenty of Kojima fans who will happily try to buy the expensive version of Death Stranding 2. Now apply that to GTA 6. Now apply it to GTA 6 in a world where, 2K literally has WWE in this state right now of if you buy the $100 or $130 version of the game, you can play it 7 days ahead of everyone else. No reason why they wouldn't do something like that with GTA. And they don't have to just make the base model $100 to accomplish that. They can sell you whatever, and they've done collector's editions of GTA in the past. Like I have a stupid fucking Grand Theft Auto safety deposit box, which is like a really stupid thing to sell. That they sold alongside GTA 4, I think it was. The Fallout bags and the hey, get a Fallout helmet. I have the stupid Fallout helmet in my garage. My son was looking at it the other day and going, "Can I wear this?" And I was like, "No. Even your head is too big to fit in this fucking stupid tiny thing." So yeah, they don't have to, like the idea of like, oh, games need to be $100. Like, no, man, the games that are in that upper tier, that upper echelon of pricing of fandom where there's such an insensitivity to pricing, those games are already finding ways to get a higher minimum spend out of their consumers on these collector's editions and all of this other stuff. What are you getting for the $130 version of WWE 2K25? You're getting... For the Bloodline Edition, you are getting the Bloodline Edition bonus pack, which has a Mattel Elite Collection Roman Reigns card. It's a Persona card, which I think the Persona cards might also unlock costumes, like skins, basically. I think that's how the Persona cards are working. You will get the Persona card for Jey Uso. If I could put a gun to my head and pull the trigger and then turn into Jey Uso and do some kind of like lightning based attack. That would be cool. You also get 32,500 virtual currency. You will also get the WrestleMania 41 pack, which is a new playable superstar TBA. And a bunch of, I don't know. Okay, you get the DLC packs that they sell those separately. If you get the ringside pass, you also get 100,000 virtual currency points. For the Deadman edition, which is the mid-tier version, but you get everything out of that too. You get it just says usable urn. You will get a usable urn. And there were 2 asterisks next to that. Okay. Exact release date of WrestleMania 41 pack content, Mattel Elite Greatest Hits Undertaker, and usable urn to be announced post-launch and subject to change. Usable urn. You'll also get Brother Love, who you can use as a manager. All right, all right. But basically, it's $130 for a bunch of digital shit, some of which will be sold separately, and so, but it is them bundling up different, their different DLC offerings, and also coming up with like, hey, here's a bunch of currency, here's a bunch of this, here's a bunch of that you might not buy otherwise. And so, they are giving up value, I suppose, but they're giving up digital value on things that it's like kind of whatever anyway, and getting you to spend $130 instead of $60. That's over twice as much by my count. So the idea of like, hey, we're going to just make a GTA cost $100 and then everyone's going to get mad about it, and some people will be unable to afford the game at all because of that price and whatever. Like, they don't want to do that, especially in a game where they are going to try to make a lot of money on you playing online and buying shark cards and buying whatever else. They want to charge as much as they can, but they also want you to get into the online territory and into spending money there as well. And so at some point, if they're monetizing players appropriately on the online section of the game, they will get to a point where they would love to give that game away for free because they will make the money back on shark cards and whatever else, right? And so those types of bundles, getting customers through the door, customer acquisition. Mobile games pay ridiculous amounts of money to acquire users because they churn out so fast. That's like acquiring users, like that type of process is very commonplace nowadays. And you don't get there by charging $100 for your game. So just from like a common sense standpoint, there's really no reason for them to do that. Like, they could squeeze their early adopters. They could. But those early adopters are also the people that are way more likely to buy one of the upgraded versions anyway, because they're the day one fans. They're the guys that are just like, yep, I'm getting this game. I'm buying whatever the expensive version is because it's going to come with fucking Tommy Vercetti's fucking Hawaiian shirt for use in GTA Online 2 or whatever. Or, I mean, maybe it will be exactly that. Now that I'm saying that out loud, that's exactly what they'll do, right? They'll do that exact thing, huh? Because why wouldn't you? That's the exact type of like nostalgia bait, sort of like, hey, you can get Tommy's shirt to wear in GTA Online. Like, that's exactly the sort of thing they would do. And so there's no reason for them to charge $100 for it. That would be fucking dumb. It'd be short-sighted of them to do it. On top of that, Jake from Texas writes in with a question, a feeling, a vibe that I think I hear a lot of these days. I just saw someone else saying this almost exact thing about PS3 games. I was wondering what your thoughts were on games from the PS3 generation turning 20 soon. I've been going back to them a lot recently and have realized three things. 1, their age isn't always immediately obvious when looking at them. Some of the baked lighting is absolutely incredible. 2, how they play. They can still feel shockingly modern. I noticed that first-person shooter controls mostly homogenized to Call of Duty's control scheme around this time. 3, the numerous remasters of the past couple years mean you don't always have to break out old consoles to play them. I guess I'm just stumped by the games of my youth not aging quite as hard as previous generations did in a fraction of the time. Yes. And so I think that there are specifically some PlayStation 3 games that have not aged well at all. But if we're talking about it generationally and talking about the PlayStation 3 as well as the Xbox 360, then yes, they hold up because a lot of games haven't changed in those specific ways. The ways in which video games have changed since then are more about fidelity, higher res versions of the same concepts, a lot of the same concepts, reality, military, crime simulators, like those sorts of things have been all the rage for a good long time. But the capabilities, the online capabilities we see out of modern games, that's dramatically different than what we saw on the PlayStation 3. Higher player counts, more connected experiences. They've gotten a lot better at patching games on a more regular basis, and so they do that to bring in more content. Obviously, in-game microtransactions have become a much bigger deal since the PlayStation 3 days. And that's not necessarily a good thing, but that is something, those are some of the ways that gaming has changed. But, that was a console that was capable of running games at 1080, 1080i, at least, in some cases. And, and most of those games really ran at 1080p and 720p, but they were up-res and they were this and that. And there's, they got there. But, we're still talking about some of those resolutions today. That's not to say that modern games look exactly like those games, but, the fidelity is being done differently now. And so, yes, you do see increases in graphical quality between now and then. It has been 20 years. But, again, the same types of looks, the same types of aesthetics, the same types of motifs and situations. Call of Duty went all the way forward in time and back down again in that 20-year period. They went from boots on the ground to boots on the ground. And in the middle, they were running on walls, but no one liked that one. So we're back to boots on the ground. And so, yeah, I do think you look at a lot of those games and, yeah, you see similarities there. But then you look at something like Spider-Man 2. You look at some of this kind of modern first-party stuff and some of the, or some of the seamless ways that these worlds work nowadays with fewer load times and a lot of other stuff like that. But you just look at the fidelity and the speed and the sense of speed from moving around the world, and you see the difference. But at the end of the day, yeah, could you do a version of Spider-Man 2 on a PlayStation 3? Absolutely. Would it be as good? Definitely not. But if you broke that up into some it had 1 million load times and it was like these much tighter, smaller mission areas and all this other stuff, you could convey that story and much of that gameplay on those platforms. You could definitely do it. And that's why, has there been a game better than Arkham City? Has there been a game better than Arkham Asylum? For that type of superhero action game, those are the games that set the tone for modern. If you're not going to do combo crazy Devil May Cry style stuff, then instead you are going to do the Batman system, and you're going to go, okay, with this type of enemy, you have to hit this, and you have to break through their armor here, and then you're going to hit this enemy here, and you're going to hit this guy a few times, and that Batman combat has become the standard for a lot of games that followed in its wake. And we still see those systems in play to this very day. But I might argue that they haven't maybe done it quite as well as Rocksteady did in those Batman games back in the day. But, that's neither here nor there. So I think, you could very easily look at modern games and look back to that specific generation and go, yeah, this is still very recognizable as modern video games. And that's why when I talk about modern video games, that's really what I'm talking about, is from the 360 PS3 forward. Because the 360, and then eventually later the PS3, is where we started to see some of those system level features about online functionality come into being. And that's where the expansion has been. Yes, the graphics have gotten better along the way, but people are still making the same types of games. You could play Destiny 1 on those machines. You look at where Destiny is now and how it's structured all these years later with Destiny 2, not that different. You know what I mean? So obviously there are compromises when you go back to those days, but like, yeah, man, like Microsoft is making a new fucking Gears of War. What's it going to play like? It's going to play like Gears of War. You know? And I think the reason why this happens, or rather like the reason why we can say this, but you can't say it about, you know, games from previous generations, or why this specific thing feels this way for this last 20 years when it didn't feel that way for the 20 years prior to that, is the technological leaps were very different in nature, right? We were going from 2D technology to 3D technology over the course of that time. We were going from cartridges to massive storage on CDs and then DVDs and then Blu-rays. So the amount of space a game could take to eventually just hard drives, fuck it, terabytes of space, who cares? But when you think about Superman for the Atari 2600 fitting to what, 2K or 4K or however much it is, or the average, you know, NES cartridge being under 1 megabyte, then yeah, you know, yeah. The fidelity was coming a long way. The technology was advancing in different ways. But as we've kind of topped out and, you know, like now we've got Mark Cerny excited about a new upscaling technology, you know, that's going to be used to kind of artificially render things at 4K instead of naturally rendering things at 4K, which the difference, who cares? At the end of the day, it's all about how it looks on the screen, which is to say, slightly muddy. But as that technology has solidified and as, you know, as they figure out like, okay, how much do we, you know, I don't want to get into like Moore's law conversations because I'll just get out of my depth really quickly. But you know, look at the reaction to the 5090 coming out and the numbers when you kind of do these apples to apples comparisons with the 5090 and the previous generation of cards. Like it is quite a bit more about those bells and whistles, like the jingling of keys as opposed to raw power. And I'm not going to say that the era of raw power is over, because who knows, maybe there's a new innovation right around the corner that will reset the clock on all that for another 20 years. Who could say? I don't know. But it's not like, oh, you know, how many colors, like it used to be, how many colors can you put on screen at the same time? And you're like, well, the Jaguar can do this many. It's like, okay, well, the Genesis games look washed out because they can only put this many colors on screen unless you do a weird display mode. The SNES, however, can do this many colors on screen, and so the games just pop a little more and might look a little washed out or faded when they are on the Genesis. And then it's, you know, how many things can you put on screen without hitting the sprite limit and slow down and this and that? You know, it was just a very different technological conversation then. And they got really damn good. By the time we got to the end of the 2D era, that stuff started looking amazing. I mean, you look at the SNES, it's an incredible, you know, like those games still hold up. They look great. Why? Because games completely changed immediately after that and started looking totally different. And so you have the SNES as this kind of last big mainstream 2D thing. And then you've got pockets of advancement there where you go even beyond that with something like Street Fighter 3 or Mark of the Wolves, or some of the other kind of like late era 2D, Neo, Mr. Do, the important stuff, you know, but you have these like amazing looking 2D things. And then all of that gets thrown the fuck away. They're like, yeah, Symphony of the Night, cool looking game. Fuck it. We're never making a game like that ever again. Because polygons. Rip. Have you seen these things? These triangles? Look at this triangle. That's the tire on a car. It's literally a triangle. And then they started adding more triangles to the tires until the tires got round. But the tires are round now. Who cares? The tires are round. How much more do you want? You know, you want more ray tracing? Why? For what? The tires are round. We're done. You know, if anything, we're taking steps backwards in the hair department. I don't think Triple H's hair looks great. Maybe it looks better than it's ever looked, but at the same time, it feels like we never got there. Hair never got where we thought it was gonna. Tress effects failed us. And I don't mean that in like a depressing way. I mean that like, you know, like we got there. Now what? Now what are we going to do with games? What happens with games now? And what happened with games now is now we see games made at all different styles and aesthetics that fit the game that they're making. And so 2D gaming, I think to a generation that is not us or the generation younger than me, but the generation below that, that's a choice. 2D games just fit in with everything else. They don't look necessarily like old games. That's just how those games look because they chose to look that way. And I think that's a fine place to be, you know? And I do think that a lot of those games are leaning on nostalgia in ways that they probably don't deserve, but hey. But I do think that, you know, like that's the sort of thing that we see more of now, right? Is like, okay, yeah, we can see these super expensive, insane, big budget, massive video games, but also, you know, hey, what if we made this small 2D thing? And, you know, like, and that game is like, those games are finding success in a way that they did not 20 years ago. You could say, and I would say, that things like Xbox Live Arcade paved the way for that smaller style of game and found ways to get those smaller games in front of more people than were going and looking for them when they were just hidden away on the Steam store somewhere. And so indie games on console, which was something that really started during the Xbox 360 era, was a massive change, a massive shift. And a massive shift in how we thought about those games, because for as much as they originally were like, oh, look at that, it's like you made an old video game. You made a new old video game. Look at you guys. Like, that's not how people think about those games anymore. They're just video games. And they just look how they look. You know, like you could say Terraria has a retro style. In fact, I would. But there are probably plenty of people that played that game that never once thought about, like, oh man, this looks like a Super Nintendo game. You know, like there are probably people that just never crossed their mind because they just never played those games. Or if they did, they played them alongside games like that via emulators. And just like everyone has access to all music all the time, now, technically, if you're willing to cross some certain lines, you can do that with games. And I don't know, I think that's pretty cool. I still think that you know, like it's a weird, you know, like the remasters that we're seeing and the things where they're taking games that are not that old and then just putting them out on a new device and they look like a little bit better now, like a Days Gone, as the more recent example of that. I do look at that and just go like, this seems crazy to me, because a lot of those games still look just about fine in their existing original format, but at the same time it keeps them on shelves, and you know, it helps you know, like if it's minimal work to port those games to newer machines, then why not do it? They're not for you. If you already played those games, like, you know, you don't need to buy the game in every format it's released in. Just like you don't have to buy, if you own a movie on DVD, no one is forcing you to buy the Blu-ray. You might want it because you're like, well, this is, I would, you know, these days you might go, well, I want to watch it at a higher resolution and, you know, like a better sound, and I guess I'll get the Blu-ray. Like, I guess, but like no one is making you fucking do that. No one is like holding you down and forcing a copy of Days Gone remastered down your fucking throat. If they are, call the police. But those are not for you, the Days Gone. Well, let's assume that you played Days Gone. I mean, that's a other thing. But it's for people who didn't play it last time around. It's not unlike the Wii U games getting ported to Switch. You know, if you played those games on Wii U and you're happy and you don't need to play them again, don't fucking buy them. But a lot of people didn't. And a lot more people play games now than did then. And so it's these opportunities where a company is looking at this and going like, well, this game might actually be better received now than it was then, for a variety of reasons. And it's not expensive for us to just do this. And so it's hard that we will like we almost certainly won't lose money on this. And so, sure, let's put Days Gone back out. That has to be how those conversations go, right? As they're looking at some chart, they're looking at some graph and going like, oh, that's not very much money at all. Fuck, yeah, do it. I mean, why wouldn't? Sure, do it. Like, this will make money. Like, this, there's no way this can lose money. Most of the work has been done. It's a game that very few people played. So if we get out there and, like, get more people into it, then sure, great, whatever. If maybe it's a game that lost money, maybe it wasn't profitable its first time out, so they're just like trying to recoup, and they're just like, yeah, fuck it, dude, put it out again. Like, maybe they think it's an okay game. Some people seem to think it's an okay game. The time I spent with it, I did not enjoy it one bit. But some people played it and came away from it going like, you know what, that game's all right. And so in a world where there are maybe not enough games coming out that are all right, sure, I guess. Why not? But I don't know, it's not necessarily taking resources away from some other project. Like, I think people get it in their heads. They're just like, I can't believe they're doing Days Gone. They're doing another Last of Us. Why aren't they making this new thing? And it's like, it's not really the same money. It's not really the same resource. It's not really the same studio most of the time. It's just not, not really how a lot of that stuff works. So, so I don't know. It's hard. Like, I don't really see a lot of reasons to get mad about that stuff. I will laugh at it and clown on it, but hey, they should probably do it. I'm sure they ran some numbers somewhere and said this is a can't miss move. All right. I mean, shit, man. There were people inside Sony when Death Stranding shipped, because they were publishing it. They're publishing this one too. They were just like, all right, man, fucking here's this thing. Let's watch this thing. They were just like, this thing's gonna fucking shit the fucking bed, dude. Can't believe we're putting this fucking thing out. I can't believe this engine went to him. Like, I can't believe, like, what the fuck is this? And then it came out and did better than I think anyone projected. And it doesn't mean it's like some like massive, huge seller or whatever, but I think it, it made enough money that they went back to make another one, right? Made enough money that they're like, sure, let's do this again. But yeah, I don't think that that's the mentality of all of Sony, but I definitely heard from a couple of people over there at the time that were just like, okay, all right. And we came this far. I guess we got to put this thing out, huh? I wonder if they had that level of exasperation just prior to the release of Conquered, or if they were like, this one's can't miss. It's a shooter. It'll be fine. Like, I don't know. Some people get real dumb when it comes to genres and how well stuff sells and whatever else. We all do. We all have the way we view this stuff. I want to say No Man's Sky was in a similar boat when Sony was publishing it. Like a real, like, all right, we're going to publish this thing and hold on to your butts, because holy shit. And that was a much bumpier ride for them for a while, huh? But everyone came out fine on that one. Anyway, that's going to do it. That's going to do it for the show. Come back next week. We'll talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is an upcoming video game that'll be out next week. And yes, and whatever else happens in the world of video games, we'll be here to discuss it. As always, you want an ad-free version of the podcast, head over to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. You get an ad-free version of this podcast, as well as a bonus podcast. That's been, it's been nice doing these kind of Wednesday bonus podcasts over there for a while. That's been a good time. So those are over there. And as well as additional shows and content and so on. You get early access to the Hall of Fame and all this other cool stuff. And so check it out, patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. I will be back with you next week for the podcast. I'll be back with you tomorrow to hang out and do something. So come on back then, and I'll see you soon. Bye.